I always kind of grew up as one of those kids. I was always kind of a giver, even though I had nothing to give. I never wanted to see anybody else without because I knew how that made
Mm.
me feel. So I think even as a young kid, I started that giving mentality and that life of service thing kind of already came through as I was growing up. It just kind of became my the way I wanted to be. It made me feel good to make other people feel good.
Vehicle are taking fire on primary and secondary positions, requesting immediate engagement and overhead control. Engage. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode number 13 of the Not So Special Forces podcast. We are feet wet. Let's do this. I'm going to get you introduced to a fantastic Marine I'm excited for today. This guy has got a great service story, and he's got a great foundation that he credits for so much of his life, and actually for saving his life. I cannot wait to get you introduced to you to the foundation and also to today's guest. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's get everyone welcome. Episode 13. This is it. Today is our guest. This is him, Justin Cooke. Hello, sir. Welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Humbled to be here.
Oh, well, thank you, man. This is great. Another episode that we got to owe a big shout out to Tim Galloway. We made,
Absolutely.
we got connected through Tim, and I always call him our silent board member because he's such an influence on the podcast, and he's always hooking everyone up to the podcast and sending me great guests and all that. So, you and I, we've been going back and forth for a couple of weeks, and then for you and I to finally have the time to sit down today, man. Time is precious. It's valuable, like I tell everyone. So just the fact that you want to devote some time out to allow me to preserve your service, your story, and all that is truly an honor for me. And so so thank you very much.
Right, man. Like I said, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's get into this. You are a former U.S. Marine. You retired as a master sergeant. So let's take it back to the beginning, my man. Marines. First to fight, first to podcast, right? So let's take it back to the beginning, man. Where'd you grow up? What prompted you to join the Marine Corps? That sort of thing, man. Take us back.
Right, right on, man. Well, I was born and raised in a small town in western Wisconsin called Mondovi, population 2545. Great rural community, a lot of great blue collar values. Small community. Everybody knew everybody. Could leave the doors open. Um,
Awesome.
if you cross the street wrong, someone told your parents. you know,
Oh,
uh, it's hard to really be too wild in school because the parents never knew all the teachers and everybody knew everybody. But it was a great way to grow up because I spent the first 17 years of my life with pretty much the same group of people. Very fortunate. We had a few come and go. We only had one that we lost very, very early. A good friend of ours passed away in third grade. But other than that, we were very fortunate to have everybody kind of stay together. And so it was, again, I would, as I got out into the world, I grew up kind of secluded. We didn't travel a lot. Grew up in a broken home. Parents divorced very young. Dad was Army, Vietnam veteran, truck driver. My mom was an artist, art teacher, and stuff like that. So as they parted ways, my brother and I've got a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, Seamus. We really relied on each other a lot growing up. Being a small community, sports really kind of kept everything together. So, football, baseball, that type of thing. And obviously in Western Wisconsin, the Packers, that's everybody's thing. So that was, we were always kind of tight knit growing up in everything we did. Um, I was one of those kids. I said I wasn't the biggest, wasn't the fastest, but it was one of those things where I was very insecure child. We didn't grow up with a lot. Like I said, we had not exactly the best living conditions at times, and having to move around. Sometimes my mom trying to do her best. We didn't have what most other people had, so I always kind of grew up as one of those kids. I was always kind of a giver, even though I had nothing to give. I never wanted to see anybody else without because I knew how that made
mm,
me feel. So I think even as a young kid, I started that giving mentality and that life of service thing kind of already came through as I was growing up. It just kind of became my the way I wanted to be. It made me feel good to make other people feel good.
fantastic.
Um, yeah, and that's
Now,
important because that kind of led me into the Marine Corps in that sense. So
all right. Now, you said you grew up with a father that was a Vietnam veteran. Did he tell you any stories of his service at all? Was he much in your life? Did you talk about his time in Vietnam at all that might have influenced you one way or another?
he did a little bit. he said he hated the Marines
We get that a
because
lot.
he said they were assholes in Vietnam, I guess. I don't know, they were bullies to the army dudes or whatever it was. But again, as a kid, I didn't really it didn't really make sense to me because I had no idea that I was ever gonna serve at that point. You know, the few stories he did tell, he ran over a couple mines, you know, he definitely had some bad years, he had some close calls and stuff like that, so which it definitely affected him. He, you know, as after him and my mom split, you know, we would stay at his apartment every once in a while when he was home off the road, and you know, he was one of those guys, man. He had those horrible nightmares and
Mm.
wake up screaming and, you know, and yelling and like grabbing me and my brother. And we're just freaking out. You know, we're 9, 10, 11 years old. We don't know what's going on. And then he'd wake up and everything would be fine, you know, and he wouldn't remember much of it. So it was, that was weird, you know, but again, he was my dad. And I, you know, I just didn't really have any exposure to any of that stuff other than some of his stories. And,
Mm.
but again, I did notice that him and his buddies that had served, the fellow truck drivers, they were all a little bit tighter than everybody else. You know, the guys that didn't. So, again, I was kind of drawn to that as well because it was like, man, these guys, most of them only, you know, didn't even serve together in the same location, but yet they had these stories and they had this bond. Excuse me. So it was kind of neat to see that, you know,
Yeah,
as a
and it
child. So
wouldn't be till years later that you understood that bond, right?
absolutely. Yeah. That really didn't hit me until, you know, after I'd kind of been in a few years and, you know, as I began to grow as a man myself and, you know, realize it, you know, looking back at the history of, you know, everything is like, man, that does now it makes sense, you know? So, Um, and again, I had a new level of compassion for him, I guess, in the sense that some of the stuff he went through, you know, as I began to realize that that era of veterans, you know, weren't exactly kind of already knew they weren't taken care of too well coming back. But you know, you start seeing the gravity of it as you become more and more involved with the veterans organizations and stuff, being in the Marine Corps and then just crossing paths with him more. And you know, you see that it was a pretty big impact on that generation. So,
Absolutely. I mean, looking back now too, I mean, guys like you and I that are older, right? We can look back and we can always see how different generations of veterans are taken care of. It's like, the World War II veterans had a lot more like, "Hoorah, we won, we defeated a global entity of evil, right? The parades and everything else, and then Korea, and then, we moved on, and then Vietnam, sorry, and the Vietnam hit, and those guys were treated like shit and they weren't taken care of. And it wasn't until I'm going to say it wasn't until like the mid 90s, early 90s that those guys were really given some of the help and some of the attention that they deserve. So I'm glad that America finally caught up to taking care of those guys, but I think a lot of them passed up, moved on without that care and support that they so desperately deserved. So
yeah, and I mean, and to that credit, I mean, my father just recently, I think, in the last year or so, I mean, has finally done the legwork to get with the VSO and get some of his, you know, veterans benefits that he's been rating for years. He just never thought that it would be a thing.
right.
You know, the Agent Orange exposure and all that stuff like that. So, he's finally getting himself sorted out, and of course, he's kicking himself because it took me and my brother. My brother's retired Air Force. Um, to tell him like, Dad, you have to go do the work yourself. They're not going to come
Yeah, no
help
one's
you.
going to do it for you.
Exactly. Yep. And he just again, they just that generation just like, oh well, you know, I'm still breathing, so I'm good. Don't have the willingness to kind of say, look, I need help or I need something. I need to figure this out. And they just don't want to do that. So, you know, I guess I feel good, and my brother and I both feel good in the sense that we could get him, you know, in the right direction. And so, actually, some of his peers as well, they're starting to do the same thing, and they're in their late 60s, early 70s now, but they're getting the help they need. So hopefully that'll help them and their families, right? You know, before anything bad happens or they do pass away. So,
Yeah, do you think you and your brother nagging your father to get the help that he needed from the VA has that kind of brought you guys with your father a little bit closer with that relationship, or were you guys tight to begin with? Or, I'm just wondering if that, about you guys nagging your father to go to the VA, if that helped you at all, or if that's made you guys any closer or not.
um, well, it kind of took him seeing me and my brother doing the legwork and being like, he's like, wow, how did you get that, you know, that rating or whatever? It's like, well, Dad, you take your paperwork and you'd go to the appointments and you know, you're not working the system. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, and you've got the
Okay.
paperwork there and the appointments and everything done. So, um, as far as you know, I guess maybe again continuing the understanding of a fellow veteran. Yeah. Again, my parents' relationship and I have always kind of been it's been fractured on and off throughout pretty much my life. You know, as a young man who when I became a father, um, I had I started harboring a lot of resentment for both of them, mainly because I couldn't, you know, when I had my first kid, I could not imagine anything better in the world. You know, so when I was growing through that, I just became more bitter and more angry at both of them. And, you know, in my mind, I'm like, man, these people are selfish. Like, how could they have a kid, and do what they did? Um, then again, I as I'm growing as a man and I'm, having that discussion with them and stuff, it's just anything else. Like you kind of grow and, I've really packed that resentment away. As we've grown again, this has been over the course of 20 years or whatever. But it's, there's still some frustration with the way it went. But again, they were both relatively young and, they made decisions and that was a different generation. And, they made the decisions and they stuck with it. I think they've tried their best. But, if anything, it was a lesson that, it's like, I know what I'm never going to do. My wife, the same way. She was a Marine. She also came up through a broken family. It was a very, very similar scenario, which was kind of weird. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we got married. We were like, we're in this for the long haul. There's nothing. I mean, it's going to take a catastrophic event, one of us not being here anymore for this to not work anymore.
Mm,
And again, it hasn't been easy, man. You know as well as I do. The deployments, the late days, the duties, um, her picking up a lot of the slack when I wasn't there. I mean, and a lot of the stress that I brought home from work, I didn't know how to handle. And again, compartmentalize or, as I was growing up through the Marine Corps, it was a challenge. But man, I owe my life to her as well
that's
because
awesome.
I
Credit.
gave her every reason to leave. I gave her every reason to leave through the Marine Corps and through my alcoholism and stuff like that. And she stayed true to her word. So,
Fuck yeah.
I,
Good.
I I'm so thankful for and grateful for her. But like I said, I think my kids are going to come out better because again, I learned lessons from my parents. So I tell them, I say, thank you. I'm not hate you anymore. I'm not mad at you anymore. I said, I just thank you for raising us the way you did, even though it may not have been ideal, but it taught me what I knew I didn't want to do. And I tell
There
my
you
kids
go.
the same thing now. Hey, I was an alcoholic. I been sober for almost 6 years now. Hey, dad wasn't perfect, learn a lesson from me, and if it's a good or a bad one, just please don't end up the way I was. And if you can
Mm,
learn from my mistakes, please do, because that'll make you a better person. And so far, knock on wood, so good. My oldest one is far and awesome. He's an awesome young man and he's kicking butt way better than I ever did at his age.
that's great, man. God bless.
Seems to be working.
That is good to hear. That is good to hear.
Yeah.
So what's up, man? You're in this small town, a couple thousand people, can't get away with much trouble. High school. You're involved with sports and whatnot. And so, what got you into the Marine Recruiter's Office, man?
Well, after my senior year, I did the probably the typical thing, kid. I wanted the free stickers. So when they showed up and made us or did our ASVABs and filled out, I put my name on a sheet of paper or a little note card to get my free sticker and went on my way and then dodged phone calls for the rest of my life for at least the next 2 years anyway. Every time they call, oh yeah, man, I'm on my way up there. Yeah, no worries. No intentions of going. I was bouncing between crappy jobs, washing trucks down at the local trucking company or hanging doors at a place up the road that was, basically into building cabinets and stuff like that. Excuse me. Bartending, which is, obviously in a small town like that, we got 9 bars. It is what it is. Drinking's the thing to do there. And, and that's the thing, like nobody really leaves that area. A lot of people stay local. So the recruiters who do have a hard time. They've got to compete with the farms and they've got to compete with the community colleges because again, nobody really wants to leave. But in any case, I told him, I said, "Oh yeah, man, I'll be up there, whatever." And go on the next couple years dodging this dude. And then as I, quit one of my last jobs because I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I felt like I was spinning my tires. My high school sweetheart and I, she graduated, so like and she's like phenomenal, man. We're still best friends. I actually still talk to her parents. Her parents actually visited us out in Human. We were out there. They were snowbirds, so they love my wife. It's a great thing because she's such an awesome person. But at the time she's going to college, she's succeeding, she's kicking butt, and here I am just spinning my tires. I'm kind of the loser boyfriend. Um, Again, like I told you, I'm a kid of service, so like when I didn't have money, I had a checkbook. I took care of everybody as best I could with no money. I wrote all the bad checks, and I was just
Mm,
irresponsible. I didn't. It's just all I could give because I had nothing else, and I thought that's what I needed to do to kind of keep the peace and make everybody else feel happy. So fast forward a little bit, start getting in some trouble, get a couple underage drinking tickets, which is pretty standard in Western Wisconsin, unfortunately. And then the third one, I got it resulted in 30 days of county jail time, and
30
so at this
days.
point, yeah, at this point, I don't have a job. My dad's already threatened to kick me out. Again, I'm not providing anything. I'm, 19 years old. I'm sorry, almost 20 at this point. Just like doing nothing. Me and my girlfriend, we had broke it off. She's, interestingly enough, this kind of, I think I mentioned it the other day, but she was hanging out with this dude who ended up being a Marine reservist going to college. And I guess maybe that was one of those things that kind of sparked me. But I never totally shunned military service, but I didn't want to leave. Just like everybody else, I wanted to stay there. And at this point, I realized in my life, I'm like, I really don't have any reason to be here. If I stay here, I'm probably going to end up dead because I'm not doing the right things to be of any benefit to anybody. And so I just picked up the phone and I was like, I'm going to call the Marine Corps recruiter back. So I call him. It's like, yeah, man, when can you make it up? And I was like, well, I don't get done with whatever I was doing at the time. I think it was helping my buddy bale hay or something like that. I'll be up at like 6, 7 o'clock. I was just expecting him to say no because they're going to be closed. And he goes, cool, I'll see you then. I'm like, okay, whatever. And it was like a 25-minute drive from where we were up to Eau Claire, where the recruiter's office was. Of course, I go in there. I honestly considered like stopping in one of the other offices before I got there because I was like, man, maybe this isn't the thing. I know the Marines are kind of hard, probably. I was like, maybe I'll just swing into the Navy office and go there instead because my uncle was retired Navy captain. Lo and behold, every other office was locked up, shut tight. Not a single one of them was open. So I walk in and look at the guy stand there. At the time I didn't know it, but he was a staff sergeant. He's like, oh, hey, are you Cooke? I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, you've been dodging me. You're from Moldova. You've been dodging me since '95, haven't you? And I looked at him like, I don't think so. He goes, oh, yes, you have. And he
Yes, you
actually picked up my, yep.
have.
And so his name was Staff Sergeant Terry Dressel. He's very important to this story because, we still keep in touch.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he goes, you're not leaving here tonight without deciding your future. And that's all he said. He was fortunate. He had 2 kids who just come back from boot camp. So obviously they got pulled into the storytelling and I had to do all the placards and everything like that. 2:30 in the morning is when I walked out of that office with a commitment to the Marine Corps.
Hell yeah.
Like I mentioned you before, I said, hey, he goes, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to drive a tank. Because I think realistically in my mind, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go out and do something, and I want to die for a reason, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive a tank, though. At least I'm not going to get shot up if I'm running around on my feet. And he goes, dude, the Marine Corps has more than just tanks and guns and stuff. And I didn't really fathom in my head.
Well, it depends who you talk to, right? I mean, you talk to some of our '03 brothers. They don't realize that an entire Marine Corps exists outside of the '03 world. And
Yeah.
I love them. I love busting their chops and I love breaking their
Yeah.
balls about it. But it depends who you talk to because yeah, okay, point made.
Yeah, yeah, they don't realize there's another whole Marine Corps that exists just for them. Where our job is to support them, right?
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So I mean, he at the time, my ASVAB had already expired. I'd been out of school for 2 years. He made me retake the test, and he's like, man, because your scores are actually kind of good. Yeah, I think I want to get you up to MEPS and um, see if we can maybe get you a different job or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to do that. And then he explained the air wing and stuff like that. And the crazy part is I'd read books about Pappy Boyington and stuff like that. My parents were kind of big. And so it just didn't cross my mind that was a Marine Corps aviator. And I guess I never put 2 and 2 together as a young kid and, whatever. So yeah, I went up there and took the test and stuff like that. And so I was able to enlist in like the 7200 series MOS. It was the aviation support. Again, still had no idea what I wanted to do, but I just knew I wanted to go out and, and do something with my life. And he had asked me, because you want to be reservist, active duty? I'm like, heck no, man, I'm active duty. I want to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Oh, by the way, I have this 30-day court case pending and I'm going to go to jail. And he goes, awesome, man. Well, thanks for at least telling me the truth. So he showed up, made sure I got out early on good conduct so I didn't miss my bus and stuff or miss my flight. So yeah, I went through the whole MEPS process, learned about the medical waiver process. I guess I had a foot that was kind of jacked up, but it never bothered me playing sports and stuff. So of course they tried to deter me from that. The doctor said I'd never make it. And he goes, yeah, you're definitely never be a Marine. He goes, your foot's too jacked up. I got a hammer toe and a bunion or whatever. And I was like,
Come on,
once again, that was more fuel to the fire. I was like,
Right.
you know what? I'm not, you're not telling me no. I got to get out of here. I got to do this. And again, same thing with that doctor. I mentioned him in my retirement speech. I told him, thank you for telling me no, because that was just guaranteed that I wasn't going to make it. And then, met my buddy Tim Mueller, who was also in the pool with me. We ended up kind of going on the buddy program, sort of, kind of, just because my waiver took so long. So we ended up leaving at the same time. And then it was really cool because November 10th, it was a Monday night.
Hell yeah.
We did the pool function at the VFW with some old vets. The recruiters and the poolies and these veterans. We did like a kind of like a pseudo dining in. Again, at the time, I didn't really know what it was, but it was such a motivational, inspirational thing hearing some of these veterans talk and stuff.
The smoking lamp is lit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first time I learned about that.
Hell yeah.
The grog and all that stuff. And then 2 days later, we're on a plane to San Diego. And as you well know, that's a moment that changes people's lives forever. And the 3-month blur, and then boom, United States Marine a few months later. So, um, came back, it was good. The recruiters sent us some letters and stuff in boot camp that with Air Force stickers, got us smoked a whole bunch, all that good stuff. But again, it was a great experience because it was a challenge, and I truly realized again that that's what I missed. That's what kind of kept me out of trouble in high school was that team bond, that sport type thing, and have a type of service for somebody else. So I was fortunate to be selected as a squad leader, and graduated as a squad leader and got promoted and stuff. But I had everything in my mind. I was like, I'm just going to sit back and be the invisible recruit, and I couldn't do that because I didn't. Again, I had that
Oh,
desire to
it's
lead
tough.
and to inspire others and to take the punishment for someone else so they don't have to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was as well as I do, man. Boot camp's an amazing and unique experience. And coming out of there, it was like I was physically and mentally exhausted, but I never felt better in my life. And I suddenly started seeing, what there's more to this world, and I'm going to be somebody now. So,
Fuck yeah.
and no one could take it away from me.
It's awesome. Yeah, trying to be the gray man in Marine Corps boot camp. I don't care what people say. Those drill
Yep.
instructors know, those guys know, and they're not letting anyone get away with laying back. They're not letting anyone get away with flying underneath the radar. They got your name. Your time is coming. So if there's anyone in the late entry program who happens to see this that thinks they're going to get away, just fly below the radar
Yep.
and not get attention to them. Okay, your time's coming. You will pay. And we all did,
Yes, you will.
man. So I went through
Yep.
boot camp with a knucklehead friend of mine. I'm still friends with the guy today, Vinny. You know the type. You can go years without seeing anyone. You see each other years later, put your arms around. It's like you never skipped a beat, man. Him and I were getting smoked all the time, getting in trouble, and we're like, hey, man, we need to try and lay low this week. And we're like, it ain't fucking happening, man. Not here. So
Yep. Absolutely.
came out there a little bit more fit than I expected because of all the time in the sandpit or whatever. Thank you, drill instructor Sergeant Martin and drill instructor Sergeant Salas and Philip for making
Yep.
sure so yeah, man, no one's
Yep.
laying low, no one's flying underneath the radar. It's not going to happen. So,
Yep.
so what's up, man? So you graduated boot camp, everything's good, and you said you had an aviation support MOS. What you end up doing?
So we got to, did the boot leave thing, turned 21 on boot leave. So fortunately for me, being a drinker at the time, I was going to be in the Marine Corps at least of age, probably a really, really good thing because I was going to drink anyway. So yeah, we got to MCT, and then they started handing out the MOSs for the guys that didn't have them. And um, yeah, they called me, and my just happened to be the kid who was in the same squad with me, this kid Bill Reel. They're like, "Hey, you two are going to Pensacola. You're air traffic controllers." And we're like, "Shoot, man, I didn't even think about that one." I was like, "What is that?" Because I was thinking, crash crew or UAS operator or something cool like that.
Well, so you had an open contract for aviation support. You just knew it was
Yeah.
going to be something in aviation support.
Yep.
You didn't actually.
72 XX.
Oh shit, the XX. Okay, so
Yeah.
all right, making sense now. Okay,
Yep. So, we're
brave.
thinking, okay, that's not so bad. Pensacola, Florida sounds cool, and really hadn't been many places. So yeah, we went to the schoolhouse down there for the schoolhouse is about 3 months. And it was a really cool experience because my brother, again, I told you he was already in the Air Force. Well, we left for boot camp. He left after me, and he was graduated before me. And then he was already in A school down in Pensacola. He was a sheet metal mechanic on A10s, his first enlistment. So he was finishing up school, and he was still there for a month. So when we checked in, we got to cross paths. We hadn't seen each other since
Yeah.
before we had left. And the interesting thing about us both enlisting is that I didn't mention this, but neither one of us knew that the other one had enlisted when we did. I just told him one day, I was like, "Hey, bud," because we weren't talking. We were fighting a lot. We were, again, teenage boys trying to be the alpha. I was being a complete loser, just kind of a shithead, drunkard, and fighting with my dad and fighting with him. And so I was in and out of the house. And I was like, "Man, I got something to tell you. I just wanted you to be the first one to know." And he goes, "Okay, well, I got something to tell you too." So we meet up, and then it was like, "I'm joining the Marine Corps." And he goes, "What?" "I'm joining the Air Force." I was like, "Cool, bro. This is good." So believe it or not, since that day, I mean, we are so tight right now. We don't, again, same thing. We don't see each other much. He's back home in Wisconsin, but yeah, we're our bond has strengthened over the years, mainly because of that. But again, we were just dumb kids at the time. But so yeah, I got to spend a couple months with him hanging out there. I get to see him
Pensacola's a neat
occasionally.
place, man, isn't it? I mean, just
It
with the
is, yeah.
history and the place and the what is it, the long pier that goes out, the concerts and everything. I spent some time at Pensacola after our lat moved, and
Yep.
I went through naval air, God, what the hell was it? NACIS, Naval Air Crewman Candidate School. And we spent like 7, 8 weeks drown proofing out at Pensacola Bay and in those big ass pools they had there, man. And
Oh,
it was
yep.
a couple of years before you got there, man. But I had a great time at Pensacola, man. It was cool. We went golfing out at the hell. that one where they trained all the helicopter pilots at on the other side of Pensacola. I forget the name of the small field on the other side, man. But
Shoot, was it Corey Station?
yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But I remember like there was a bell or something that if an airplane was taking off, the bell would ring and you couldn't tee off because the freaking golf ball was going over the active duty runway,
Oh,
man. And you're like, so you had to
that's
wait.
awesome.
They had mirrors and stuff. You're like, I don't see an airplane lined up. I think it's safe to tee off. So yeah,
Yeah,
man.
that's
But
pretty cool.
Pensacola was a cool time, man. I think we went through Hurricane Aaron when I was there, man, and we were hanging out
Okay.
at the hell was the name of it? It was like the Hotel Flamingo or something. It was right outside the main base, or I'm sorry, right outside the main gate, man. We had a great time during Hurricane Aaron, man. Bunch of Marines drinking, throwing furniture off the balconies and stuff, and watching them get taken
Absolutely.
away. And yeah, man. But Pensacola's always a good time. And you got the Blue Angels flying around and everything
Yeah.
else, and just a big mix of Marines and Navy guys over there in Pensacola, man. So hell yeah. So.
Yeah, and it was cool. We were there for their, the Blue Angels, like, homecoming show,
Mhm.
at the beach there, so it was a really cool experience, but like I said, I never really been anywhere out like that, so, but, I had a really good time down there, but it was also the first time in my life that I'd ever actually studied, because I realized quickly that air traffic control was it was a book-heavy course, man, and they jammed our brains so full of stuff in 3 months
Mm.
that, it was a very unique MOS because we didn't leave the schoolhouse with an MOS. We're still unqualified. We're just basically trained students. It was almost like an MCT course. Just they jam your head full of info and take some of that with you and go forth and succeed. So I mean, and again, I wasn't at that time. I realized I didn't want to fail anything anymore. I couldn't. And so I was like, I'm going to get through this, and it was great because our class had study groups and guides and stuff like that, so they helped out. But again, it was the first time in my life I realized that I'd always just kind of written myself off as stupid because I didn't have good grades in school. But it wasn't. It's just because I didn't care. I really didn't care. I kept good enough grades to play sports. That's the only thing I wanted to do was play football, play baseball with my friends, and
Yeah, whatever you
and
needed to do to maintain the minimum and stay in those
yeah,
teams, right, for the school standards. I
yep.
mean, but you
And at
scored
that
well
time, it
enough
was
in
a
the
C minus.
ASVAB to get you scored well enough on the ASVAB to get a aviation.
Yeah. So it's kind of a surprise. But again, I realized that I wasn't just a huge failure. So, it was that kind of that moment where I'm like, all right, again, I'm still talking to my recruiters at this time. They called, check in on us and, get the 3 months out. And then, as soon as I graduated school, got orders that was the other thing. I didn't even know Buford existed. I was thinking, hey, if I go East Coast, West Coast, overseas, I'm thinking, okay, I want to go East Coast because it's closest to Wisconsin, because I still have that desire to go back and see my friends and stuff. I'm getting 21, 22 years old, still wanting to be somewhat close to home.
Want to show
And so
those
I'm thinking,
people
okay,
want to show those people back home that you made it and still come dip in and
yeah,
dip out, let them know how things are on the outside of that
yeah,
small
yeah,
town.
yep. And so, I was thinking, okay, there's Cherry Point. At the time, I just knew Cherry Point and New River. I'm like, okay, well, that's not so bad. I guess that's up there somewhere. And so when they handed the orders out, they're like, yeah, Buford. And I was like, where the heck is that? Little did I know it was the biggest jet base on the East Coast at the time, but, so kind of a blessing in disguise because, in Pensacola, I'd never been in weather like that for that extensive time. The humidity was under just insane. And then I come to Buford and it's almost exactly the same. So,
Yeah, but with real
um,
waves on the beach.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, man, came to Buford and, again, it was kind of nice. I think it was kind of a bonus for me because I didn't go somewhere big. Buford at the time was about 60,000 people.
Hmm.
Um, I
It's
guess
a
it was the
beautiful
biggest
area,
city I'd
man.
ever been in my life at that point. But, Eau Claire, where I came out of, the recruiting office was out of college town that's just up the road. So we spent a lot of time there growing up. So it wasn't completely, out, but it's pretty, they call this place the low country, but it's realistically the slow country,
Hmm.
for the very reason that everything just kind of slows down out here and everything's kind of chill and everybody's kind of laid back. It was my first exposure, kind of like the Southern living style. And,
Yeah, Buford's a
I really kind of,
badass area, man. I mean, so close to
yeah.
Hilton Head and all those other
Oh, yeah.
areas, and it's just I love Buford, South Carolina. And I told you about that one story offline that we won't talk about here, but it
Yes,
was always
sir.
a great reason to go down to Buford,
Yeah.
man. What a great area, man. And it
Yeah.
sucks
But
because you get stationed there, right? You get stationed in these awesome places, man. Like when I was up at Cherry Point, man, it was badass, man. We were like 20 minutes away from Atlantic Beach. I don't care what anyone says, you're not gonna win me over. It's like the best beach beach in America, man, along Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. You know, you got the Shackleford Island area, you got the Outer Banks just south of it, you got the Neuse River, and there's so much to do there, so much, and it's just so beautiful, man. But you know, North Carolina, South Carolina for the Marine Corps, man. I know people love their San Diego, they love their Yukuni, they love Okinawa, and you know, Hawaii and whatever else, man. But I felt so fortunate, man, to be an East Coast Marine, man, because it was just you got the I-95 corridor up and down. You got plenty of stuff to keep you in trouble, plenty of stuff to keep you not into trouble. And yeah, Beaufort was badass, man. I always loved flying temporarily down there, you know, RON and spending the night, you know, doing something down in Beaufort, man. It was always a great time going down there.
Mm. Yeah, and again, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because my brother had been stationed at Pope Air Force
Okay.
Base up in North Carolina, so he's
Yeah,
up there in Fort Bragg. So we were only a couple hours away from each other.
that's it.
Yeah, so I'd go visit him, and I think we visited, went to Surf City and stuff at the beaches over
Mhm.
there. So, yeah, so like I said, it was still kind of like, all right, cool. I got my brother up the road from me. You know, we're starting to bond. He was already married to his high school sweetheart. So, and again, I was still single at times. It was again, I knew his wife. We all grew up together. Like I said, yeah. So it was a great first experience. Again, I was very fortunate. I came into a facility that had some amazing Marines that shaped my career and my life. You know, I look back and I as I've met Marines over the years and stuff like that, some of them have such horrible, you know, first enlistments that they get out. And a lot of times it has to do with leadership or, you know, they say the Marine Corps, but, you know, the Marine Corps always kind of gives you exactly what you deserve, you know, whether it's good or
Oh
bad.
yeah.
So some of them earn those bad things and then they, you know, they turn their energy the wrong way. But, you know, none of us are so ignorant to believe that sometimes there aren't, you know, toxic leadership environments or, you know, commands and stuff like that. So
Yes,
I
sir.
always feel bad for kids that have that because I was very fortunate again to be in an amazing group. Shoot, there's still a good amount of people that I talked to from that first crew that I worked with, to this day still. You know, now again, I owe my career to them because they were kind of able to guide me in the right direction and you know, give me the opportunities and challenge me in the right way to help me succeed. You know, and I'll forever be indebted for those guys. You know, whether we agree on you know politics or sports or anything else like that, it
Oh,
doesn't
Adam.
matter because yeah, because again, they're friends for life. You know,
Yeah.
and these
Your
guys are
brethren.
mentors. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky. It was a great first experience. Able to get my qualifications, stuff like that, and work relatively quick. Again, Buford as a single guy at the time was pretty miserable. You know, there was one really janky club out in town that kind of you know did a little bit of everything, and so yeah, we would travel to Savannah or Charleston, stuff like that. You know, and it's you know as well as I do, it's about halfway, about an hour both ways. So yeah, again, but again, we had a really tight crew. We took good care of each other. Great barracks community and stuff like that. So again, I was finding that team and that community and that bond that I was missing for that 2 years of my life, and it really kind of began to shape me
Good.
and you know help me realize where I wanted to be. You know, again, they challenged me. They put me up for meritorious boards. I was you know fortunate enough to get meritorious board of corporals. When I did that, same thing. I called my recruiter. Hey, staff sergeant. At the time, he was a gunny. Oh no, yeah, he was still staff sergeant. He goes, "Hey, I got promoted to meritorious corporal." You know, and he was like, "Oh, you know, we're proud of you." They sent me a you know a card and stuff like that. And after I finished my first tour in Beaufort, you know, I went back and I got orders to Iwakuni,
Well,
and
let's
so
hold
I
on.
got
Well, hold
oh
on,
yeah,
man. You know, let me stop you because there's something that's got my curiosity piqued, and I want to, you know, figure it out. So you got done with Pensacola, right? You are trained. You're a trained student, right? But you don't know exactly what you're doing yet within the air traffic community, right? So then you get orders to Beaufort, right? So what happened in Beaufort to get you like, hey, this is my final MOS. This is what the Marine Corps and the taxpayers are going to be paying me for. Is this? Was it something you had to test into, or was it something they groomed you for, or is it something you showed up for Pensacola at with you know with your SRB in front of you, your service record book, and they're like, okay, let's put him in this. I mean, how did that work out? Were you in the tower, ground, working a bow
yeah,
line, or what? So
I got you. Yeah, so for air traffic control, we have tower and radar.
okay,
Two different training environments. Again, we all kind of serve the same purpose, but the tower tends to serve the airfield itself, like in the airfield proper, and the airspace around it, and then radar tends to serve like a little bit bigger piece, basically responsible for you know pushing airplanes out and bringing them back in, and then the small satellite airports around the area and stuff.
handed them off.
Yeah, yeah. And so basically, you know, as we come out of the schoolhouse, you know, we don't know. The facility we go to kind of determines where we go based solely on availability of training, how many students are on a position ahead of us. So, you know, it was just like by chance I went to the crew where I became a tower marine.
Okay,
So I went up and trained on the three positions up there, which were tower data, ground control, and local control.
okay,
And again, I was fortunate because I was able to go from one to the next in a relatively linear pattern. Doesn't always happen that way. And students will sometimes go upstairs for a couple, downstairs for a couple, and they don't get what we call the majors, which the majors are the big positions: local control, approach control, arrival control, and those are the ones that tend to take people out into the FAA, and into that environment, because those are the calls that they're looking for out there. So I just happened to be a tower marine, and it worked out the way it did. So yeah, interestingly enough, like I said, the requirements for our MOS to get promoted and stuff required to have all the qualifications upstairs and downstairs. So, and again, it's changed back and forth throughout the years. I think now it's down to just two of the three to get promoted to master sergeant. But I didn't even finish due to deployments and rotating back and forth and stuff. I never even actually achieved my last Raider qualification until like 2011.
Wow.
So it took me,
That took you quite some time because you entered in what, 1997?
yeah, 98. I
So,
led the book. Yeah, I got the Buford. So yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, over 10 years.
yeah, 12 years, man.
Yep. And so again, it's just sometimes again that training cycle is not linear. I had opportunities, but again, I had started and then stopped. One of the first times I did actually was probably the roughest patch I'd had with my wife and our
Mm,
new kid. I was not handling the stress. I was not handling being a new father, and training on this major position very well. I was still trying to man the crew, and again I was putting all my energy into everybody else and every other task, and I was doing what so many Marines do, is burning myself out by
mm,
not paying attention to what was going on with me and inside my body and my mind.
sure.
Um, which, well, again, that kind of a later segue to where I'm at now. But yeah, I was just pouring everything I could into it, and I just was burning the candle at both ends and was literally burning myself out. So again, that opportunity, I couldn't achieve it as a staff sergeant like I wanted to, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise. It kind of gave me an opportunity to get out and breathe a little bit, and then focus and become better at what I was already qualified on.
All right. Well, earlier you mentioned that your wife was also a Marine. How did that work out? Where'd you guys meet? How did that whole transaction take place?
Yeah. So yeah, we honestly we met in Buford. We actually knew each other from the barracks before I went to Japan the first time. She was she did aviation supply, so she had worked with the SAR unit when we had it here for a while, and then she worked for station supply and stuff like that. But we all had a lot of the same friends because we lived in the same barracks. And I just knew her at the time. We were just friends or whatever. As I still had in my head from everybody is like, don't ever date a WM, don't do that. You're gonna, it's gonna ruin your life or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'd never had any intentions of it. And quite honestly, we were just friends and really just drinking buddies and hanging out. Went to Japan, and at the time was the 1 year tour unaccompanied. So I was back to Beaufort in a little over a year. Started training again. Most of the people I knew were still there, and we just happened to cross paths in the barracks again because she was still in, and started talking or whatever. And then it just kind of became more than that. We ended up going on a date, and boom, here we are.
Oh, yeah.
almost 25 years later.
Yeah, almost 25 years later, you told me, right? That's great with 3 kids, right? Yeah, that's awesome. It's a rare thing that those service marriages are outstanding and last as they do. My brother's friend. His name is Paul Lang. He's a great guy. My family, we absolutely adore the guy. He's a great dude. He's an actor. He's a builder, whatever. But he actually met his wife in the Marine Corps too, and they've been
Okay.
together, man. It's like over 30 years, man. But from the
Oh, that's
outside,
awesome.
from the outside, you're like, oh, dude, you're married to WM. No. And then, yeah, man, it works, man. Things are cool. They're, not every, so good for you, man. That's great.
Yeah,
And it's
it is
helpful
like
too because you take an element away and it's something that this is something that when you have a veteran is married to someone who doesn't have those same experiences, I don't care if it's boot camp, deployments, just dealing with the daily grind of being in the military, whatever, there's a certain understanding that is not understood when you're an active duty guy married to someone who's not. And I think it's helpful when you have a good, nourishing, supportive relationship with someone who else is active duty, even though they got their own trials and tribulations within that, right? But there's a certain element of not understanding that is removed when you marry someone who else is active duty. Because I mean, does that make sense to you? So it's like
absolutely.
there's something that doesn't have to be explained over and over and over again to a non to a regular dependent, right? Whereas when now you don't have a dependent, you have a partner who's also dealing with the same bullshit. Like, so those discussions and the defense of the defense of why the deployment, the defense of, why is this happening? That's all removed, and that can be very helpful because you're not spinning your wheels trying to explain yourself why things are happening because they know, and it's got to be. And when you land a good partner like that in service active duty, man, I could think that's just a wonderful, wonderful, healthy addition, man, where you don't have to explain that why. So good
Yeah,
for you,
exactly.
man.
And again, it's a challenge because she too is a very competent, sound individual in the sense that she's, when we were very young together, we both kind of wanted to be, we're both NCOs, so we're like, hey, I'm in charge and I'm in charge. And it's not necessarily, going against each other, but it's like, hey, we had to learn how to work together. And then you're right, man, once the deployment cycle started kicking up, um, when my first deployment, I'm trying to think, we were dating when I went to Kyrgyzstan, and then we were married when I went to Africa. She was awesome because of the sense that she saw through like the BS, a lot of the spouses clubs, and the wives are like always panicking about stuff. And she would just get so frustrated with it. She's like, well, you guys can knock it off. If there's something going to happen, you're going to know about it. They're going to tell you,
Right.
just stop panicking, putting everything on social media. And so she always tended to gravitate to hanging out with the Marines anyway, because she
Yeah.
was one. And the spouse was like, well, why does she get along with everybody so good? It's like, well, because she's a Marine. She's not, you know,
Yeah. She gets
and,
it.
she was the one she would go to the fro and say, look, please, for the love of God, don't explode my mailbox with all of your emails. I know what you do. If I need help, I'll call you. She goes, if there's a River City, I get it. I know exactly what that is. I don't care. I just care that there's no bad news afterwards. And she just was able to kind of like compartmentalize and like press through so much of that stuff and still handle the kids in her life. And like, she didn't panic if she didn't hear from me for, 3 or 4 days or
Yeah.
whatever. Whereas, the
All
other
good.
spouses are just losing their minds. Yeah. She's like, they're in the middle of nowhere. What do you expect? You're not going to be able to Zoom call every single day. It's just not, yeah, we're not grunts, but we're not, just readily available for everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge,
That's
huge
great.
plus, man. It's bonus.
That's great. So you mentioned Curry. So hold on, Beaufort, and then Iwakuni, and then so
Yep.
what happened first? Did you go from Beaufort to Kyrgyzstan, or did you go from Beaufort to Iwakuni and then back, and then Kyrgyzstan? I mean, what was your flow of the deployments and the attachments and the TDYs?
Okay. So yeah, so I left Beaufort in 2000, October 2000, went to Iwakuni, and that was the first time I'd been actually on debt orders. And so in ATC, we were kind of another anomaly. Again, we have station and debt orders. Attachment and deployment air traffic control is almost 180 degrees from station air traffic control. All right. Station air traffic control is like FA type stuff. And our deployment stuff is expeditionary gear, working with FARPs and stuff like that. Typically, on the move,
You're
MMT
spit.
teams, stuff like
You're
that.
speaking my language when you say FARP.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's the type of stuff that we're supposed to do on that. And it's totally different than the environment that we train in. So that was kind of my first exposure to the expeditionary side of it, other than the little piece we got in the schoolhouse. And so, trying to think, I was in Iwakuni like 5 months, and we got exercise to go to Australia, down into Darwin, or not Darwin. I'm sorry, Rockhampton, which is down on the Gold Coast. And it was supposed to be a month and a half, 2 months, or whatever it was. We were sporting 533 and 224 here out of Beaufort, the jet F-18 squadrons. And, you know, for whatever reason, we couldn't get our radar, our Tattle B radar up and working. So, we just did some very basic operations type air traffic control. We were working with the host nation station, the tower, the civilian controllers, which was a great experience, man. That was the best time I'd ever had so far in the Marine Corps, because these people were just so laid back and so cool, and they took good care of us. So we worked as, in there. And then once the deployment was up, I guess they had an exercise that it got extended down to, that one went up to Darwin, or Catherine, Australia, which is Tyndall Air Force Base, is an Australian Air Force Base up there, way up in the Northern Territory. They didn't have augmented at the time going, but they needed one to go because 224 was going to continue on and go in like another 4 months out there. Of course, I'm a corporal at the time, but I'm the only person on the deck that has all of my calls in the tower. I was the only CTO, as they call it, a tower supervisor. And so the two sergeants that were with us didn't have all their calls. The deck commander makes a decision. He goes, well, we need someone to go to this debt, and it just needs to be one person because it's just basically, again, it was tower liaison type billet, where basically I was just communicating with the ODOs and stuff like that, make sure the birds came out, come back. I wasn't authorized to actually control because the Australian Air Force controllers were working the tower that they were at. Of course, every staff NCO in Iwakuni was, letting me know that don't worry, we'll get you out of there. We'll come take your place. And the lieutenant's like, nah, man, we're just going to send him. There's no reason to send somebody home and send him back. And they were pissed. They were absolutely pissed because I ended up spending almost 6 months in Australia. Again, it was awesome. I had the best time of my life, but it was a very key turning point in my military career because at that time I had every intention of getting out. With my CTO, I was going to go back to Wisconsin. There was an air traffic control school in Minnesota. In my brain, I'm like, hey, I'll just go there, finish up my training, and go get in the FAA. Again, at the time, I was almost 24 years old. And all the money I had saved up to get out in EAS, I blew down. Dude, I had a good time. I had a
I
really,
get
really
it.
good time.
I get
It
it.
was a few $1,000s, but yeah, it was Australia, man. I figured I'd never be there again. And it was so fun, in fact, that I literally had filled out all the paperwork with the officers there because to be an officer in the Air Force there, you just need to have a high school degree. Well, to be an air traffic controller in the Australian Air Force, you have to be an officer. So I already had met the requirements. And they're like, yeah, if you want to, you can just, you got to go back home, get a visa, do some other stuff, but you could come back and enlist in the Australian Air Force. And I literally had the paperwork done. Because again, at the time, I had nothing else except myself. But the only hang up for me at that point was the unknown time between getting out of the Marine Corps, because I had EAS, and then I had to figure out something on how long it was going to take to get the visa and the paperwork.
Mm.
I also had a reenlistment option in the Marine Corps with, a $15,000 bonus or whatever. Again, at the time, that's a lot of money for me. So I'm like, man, what do I do? So I talked with the career planner. Again, I was out alone and unafraid. I didn't have anybody from my own unit. I was all by myself. They kind of pseudo attached me to the 224 guys and ended up obviously reenlisting in the Marine Corps because it was just like that was the decision. But, I was really close to staying there. But then as that deployment or that exercise was winding down, 9/11 happened.
Mm.
It was like 12:30 in the morning, something like that there. I was already sleeping and some of the guys came in and banging on the doors like, hey guys, something just happened. And so we're all like, what the heck? And run out and watch TV and, just kind of like taking it all in. Here we are in Australia. We're like, wow, like we're out here. What's going to happen? Um, First time I'd ever gotten into 7-ton in shower shoes and a freaking cutoff shirt and my Kevlar because they were like, we don't care what you're wearing, just get in the 7 tons now. We're trucking everybody down to the flight line. The CO wants to see everybody like immediately. So we get down there. They do the same thing. Hey, anybody from New York, New Jersey area, come over here. And the chaplain's over there. They start sorting through it out and they're kind of briefing us. And it was kind of like that, oh shit moment, because again, I came in, there was that peacetime Marine Corps. There was nothing going on really at the time. Iraq was already kind of over and everything had wound down. And I was just kind of like, all right, this is what I had joined for. Again, I didn't realize really ATC, what was I going to get to do or deploy and get the option to do, but I was like, something's going to happen. So, they sort through everything. The whole thing gets sorted out for the next couple weeks and stuff. And then again, we end up going back to Iwakuni. I do my reenlistment and then I get orders back to Beaufort. I'd requested detachment orders again because I really wanted to deploy. And so I was able to go det to det and was here for, it was only a few months, I think. And then we got our first set of orders to Kyrgyzstan.
Mm.
There was the Iraq thing hadn't spun up too much yet. And we ended up in that Kyrgyzstan, Djibouti cycle kind of. So we went out there, did that first deployment. And then in 2003, did the Djibouti deployment.
Mm.
And so again, the first one, wife and I were still dating at the time. And then the second one, we were married. That second one, that was again the first time I'd ever been away for her for an extended period of time. The Kyrgyzstan deployment was like 3 months. They ended up again splitting the debt about halfway through. We had more people than we needed. They sent a bunch of us back. But that was because they were getting ready to spin up Djibouti. So we went in there. We weren't on the mirror or anything like that. We were just stationed there. Excuse me.
Now,
And
with your
then,
deployments to Australia and everything else, was your then to be wife, did she have any deployments that overlapped yours at all, or was she just part of the air station? She didn't deploy. I mean, did you guys have any conflicting? I don't want to say conflicting, but did you
yeah,
guys have any overlapping where you'd be back but she wasn't there type of
no,
deployments? Or
no, she had EAS'd in 2002.
oh, okay,
So like, yeah,
all
so
right,
she had gotten out like kind of
okay,
right before everything and hadn't really got activated for any of that stuff.
okay.
That again, that was kind of a blessing. Again, same thing though. She was a little at first a little perturbed. She was like, "Gosh, dang it, I just missed it." Yeah, so she was already out and working at doing a contract job and stuff on base. She was young and kind of holding it down good. Again, it was just the two of us at that point, so I had some roommates just to cut the bills and stuff. So people we knew, and she just kind of existed and did her thing. Um, but yeah, Africa. When I came back from that one, that was the kind of the first time I realized that we were good because I really missed her. And it was one of those ones where again
What
we
part
didn't
of
get to
Africa
do our
was it just in Djibouti you were at? I don't wanna say just like
yeah.
only there, but
Yeah, we
it was
didn't
in
we didn't really
Djibouti?
hop in and out anywhere. That was
Okay,
a unique deployment because we got stuck being as tower liaisons. Again, we didn't get
okay.
to work on our expeditionary gear because they had the French and the Djiboutians there. We were kind of the middlemen, interpreting English. The Djiboutians all spoke multiple languages, and the French spoke French, but not very good English. So, and
Shocking.
they didn't like each other, so
Nope.
we kind of had to be the moderators for all that stuff. But yeah, and at the time we had, I think it was Air Force C-130s and then Marine H-53s and stuff down there. But yeah, again, it was a couple years removed from the Black Hawk Down and stuff like that. Again, it had already been, I think, a few years prior to that. So yeah, again, it was, as well as I do, man, it was hot down there. So it
Oh,
was
yeah, it was hot.
another unique experience. But again, I made some really good friends. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I deployed down there with, and I pinned him to sergeant. We're actually both supervisors here in Beaufort together. He was
Beautiful.
my boss when I came back. So again,
Small
we've known
world,
each other
man.
for years, and it's a great,
Small world, small Marine Corps, small
yep,
everything after service, man.
yep,
That's why you gotta be nice to everyone you meet along the way, because you never know when you're gonna be sharing a tower with them or sharing a job or a
yep,
desk or something else with them, man. So hell yeah.
yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, he ended up, like I said, he was my boss. So,
Yeah.
so,
All
but
right.
yeah, so yeah,
Couple deployments now. After Africa, where'd you end up?
again, I was still in Beaufort at that time. They flipped me over from det to station, so
Okay.
that was a unique environment because I was in Beaufort from 2001 to 2007 because of that.
Oh,
So that was what I do. That's very unique
yeah, it's a
for a
decent
Marine to stay in one
stretch.
spot. Yeah. So I came back to station, got my calls back. Again, that was at the time when I was trying to train to some of my rest of my radar calls. Again, had our first kid in 2006. So again, I wasn't handling that stress real well, and then we got orders to Japan, which was funny because the monitor um, happened to be he was my staff NCOIC in Iwakuni when I was there the first
Mm,
time, and he had scheduled me to go to Coble's course, and I said, "Oh, Master, don't worry about it. You don't need to send me to that. I'm getting out." And he goes, "I'm still going to send you no matter what. You're going to need it." And I went. Another great story from that course down the line here, but did Coble's course, did all the thing, got the high PFT. Was pretty motivated at the time. My fellow controller got the motive award, so both of us, rocked that course. Fast forward a few years, 2006. He's the monitor sitting across from me. I was like, "Hey, Master Guns, if I can, I'd like to go back to Iwakuni." And he goes, "That's on Cooke." He goes, "You're getting out." And I just looked at him for a second. And I was like, "Excuse me, Master Guns." He goes, "You told me you were getting out in 2001." And I was like, "Yeah, here I am." And he goes, "It's probably a good thing I sent you to Corporal's course, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, you
yeah.
were right. You're right. I was wrong." But yeah, he cut me orders back to Japan, and again, at that time I got to go back on dead orders again. That's where I got my first Afghanistan deployment out of there on the back
Okay.
end of that. But yeah, I went over there with a great group of gunnery sergeants. I mean, there was like 9 or 10 of us in the facility at the time, and then like 4 or 5 of us deployed together. And that was the first real expeditionary deployment that I was able to get. We were down in Camp Dwyer down there in Helmand Province,
Mm,
south of like Camp Leatherneck and stuff like that. And that was the time, right? We were there when the big push to Marja went in. All the grunts left right out of our little airfield right there. So,
yeah. So how
but that
much
was a little
time?
more exciting.
Yeah, and because I mean, those guys they're doing it right.
Yep.
Afghanistan, the good fight, and Marja and Helmand. I mean, you can't get more into it in Afghanistan than that, right? So how was your time there, man? Day to day living, was it? Were you 12 hours on the airfield, 12 down? Do you have a couple days off, even though you weren't going out locally or anything like that? I mean, what was the day to day like for you in Afghanistan?
Yeah, we tried to keep it as routine as we could. I mean, we had there was an expectation that there was at least 16 hours of work for the
Mm,
for the crews and stuff from the CO down there. Um, even as air traffic controllers, we still adhere to the FAA standards while we're deployed, the best we can. And there's a 10-hour minimum work rule. So we split the crews up to where we weren't overworking people. Myself and the fellow and my gunnies that were like the crew chiefs and stuff like that, or the branch chiefs, we went ahead and we worked quite a bit just to take the load off those guys. But at the time, they were still building that airfield, so we were kind of working mostly. Um, the big operations out of there were the H-60, the dust offs, the Army H-60s, and the Marine Cobras that were right there. They were
Mm,
running a lot of ticks and stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, that was my first experience with seeing some of the bad coming out of the Helmand province there. We were pretty fortunate that base was so remote. I mean, it's not like we were getting shelled every day or anything like that, because probably our biggest threat would have been the insider threat for the
Hmm.
people that were working there. But there was nothing within, it seemed like 100 miles in any direction. You could see people coming a mile away. So it was like no real threat to the base itself. Leatherneck was getting a lot more, and then the guys up in Kandahar and stuff like that, and Bagram were facing more of it, but they were right up against the mountains and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, seeing, because we were right there on the flight line, and we hung out quite a bit with the pilots and stuff down there, trying to make sure we were giving them everything they needed, or get out of their way when we needed them to, or they needed us to. Um, a couple times they'd bring in, the families, some kid getting shot up, or, an ID goes off or something like that while they're playing soccer, and, you know, kid loses a leg, but they're doing some triage stuff or saving his parents. And so we were down there interacting with some of the kids that they bought in and stuff like that. Give them candy, stuff like that, and just kind of hang out. So that was, again, it really tugged on my heart in the sense that, that sense of service is like, gosh dang it, and at this time I'm a dad, I got two kids, and it really started hitting me. Um, in the sense that, like, I just couldn't believe that they had to live like that, right? And again, and I think at those times like that, it doesn't matter what your opinions of anything are at that point. It's like, if you're a good human and a good person, that's just not gonna make you feel good, and it's gonna make you want to do more.
Yeah.
So we spent as much time as we could with some of those kids that came down there, just to try to give them just a little, little piece of normalcy again, whatever that is to them at that point. Um, maybe try to validate what we're doing down there. And, it's like, yeah, but these people just want to be able to go out in their yard and play soccer. The kids
That's
just
it.
want to walk to school, and they just want to be left alone and live a normal life. And I kind of glazed over it, but, the opportunities as an air traffic controller, we didn't go out and do a lot of hooking and jabbing and stuff, but in both Africa and Kyrgyzstan, we were blessed that the chaplains there, man, they did such a good job of getting us involved with humanitarian stuff in the communities. In Kyrgyzstan, we did a couple security tours with the Air Force guys, went to the villages, handed out candy, same thing, just hung out with the kids, played with them and
Cool.
stuff like that. And in Africa, we fed babies at the village, or I'm sorry, at the orphanage. I guess during the middle of the summer there, again, as well I do, it's so hot, but the families don't have a way to safely take care of the kids. So they'd bring them into the orphanage that had electricity and had air conditioning, and the kids would just stay there for like 5 or 6 months. Well, these are infants, and so our air traffic control that we would, when our days off or whatever, we'd go over there and feed the kids, help them change diapers and stuff like that, clean up the orphanage, just to do good volunteer work and try to do some good things. And the ladies there were so appreciative of it, because it just took a huge weight off of them. I adopted my little kid, was his name just happened to be Saddam, but I adopted him in the sense he had a Wisconsin Badgers onesie on, like a little one, and I could not believe it. And I was like, I don't know where
Little
they got
kid
it
after
from,
my
but I was
own
like,
heart.
yeah, exactly. I was like, hey, there's my little cheesehead, so I'm gonna take care of him. But that was a really, it was so gratifying. Like I said, it kind of made me sad when towards the end of the summer they all left. And we're like, hey, we're gonna go out and do, no, orphanage is empty again. Everybody's back in their parents, and we're just kind of like, crap. I had this little bond I kind of created with this kid, and they're infants, they don't know any better, but again, you get that sense of service, and you're able to, give someone else, or somebody, just a little sense of relief or a little sense of help. I mean, it's just the most gratifying thing in the world. And so, fast forward to Afghanistan. I mean, we can't, not a lot of humanitarian stuff we can do outside the wire. The grunts are out there doing their thing, hooking and jabbing. And I know they some of my buddies that I've talked to that were on the ground side. I mean, they did do a lot of humanitarian stuff. He goes, but it was a whole different, way more dangerous environment that they had to deal with, because they just didn't know if it was a setup or what was going on. So, um, but again, it's just, you see those people, they just want to be left alone. They want to have a
Yeah.
normal life, and it's yeah, that, again, being a father, being a husband. That's the first time where, like, I started having a hard time sleeping, and really started to worry about the guys around me, and like, man, I just can't. I want to be here. I don't ever want to leave, but I want to go home and hug my kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
it
how
was.
much so how much total time did you spend in Afghanistan?
Um, See, the first time we were there for, I think, 6 months, and then the second time I went back in 2014 as a mass sergeant. I was able to go out as a senior enlisted guy for the det. They had downsized the deployment, so it went from a lieutenant colonel and a mass or sergeant major to a major and a mass sergeant. So I was fortunate to be selected. I volunteered for it, but got selected anyway. We went out and were the last air control group that was out there that shut down Leatherneck,
Mm.
and then moved everything out of there and up to Kandahar. So that one was about, I think, 5 months is what we were ended up being the whole time. So close to a year
That had to
total
probably
time.
be a pretty surreal feeling shutting that operation down, huh?
Well, yeah, especially Leatherneck. I mean, because when we got there and shoot '09, that place was just like it was like another city. It was
Yeah.
huge. It was between that and Bastion, it was just massive. And then so when we went back out, I mean, it was already at probably at like 50% capacity. Um, Everything was still there. It just wasn't nearly as many people and not nearly as much operation. So it was really, yeah, it was very surreal watching that whole thing wind down and be involved in that. And then once again, we're inside the wire and, reading the SIPR reports every day. It was like, felt like things were pretty hairy outside. Then, there was this, obviously the Marine Corps doing a very phased drawdown approach, and it's very intentional, but we still have a lot of people come through the gate. They're still doing things on base and cleaning things and moving things. And, they're not Americans. And it was just like, the only thing we could do is just be prepared. And so I was like, I've got 72 Marines I need to make sure get home. It doesn't matter. And we got the guys bouncing back and forth between Kandahar and Leatherneck because we had our guys, our ground guys and stuff were trying to build another whole like TAC command center up there. They were I think the first ones, if I'm not mistaken, that had the very first dual TACs running at the same time, so the commander could have vision from both places, and they had them both running so they could do like a seamless turnover.
Okay.
It was awesome. It was a really great thing. I was so proud of those guys. They were such an awesome unit. But again, a very unique experience because I didn't meet any of them until we got to the airport to our reserve base to leave. We never met face to face. I knew the XO just because he was one of my lieutenants in air traffic control that I grew up with, and again, he was my retiring officer. But yeah, it was just meeting a whole new command unit and having to mesh with those guys basically on the fly was quite the challenge.
Now, hold on, man. You mentioned that you were a master sergeant when we started to scale things back a bit, right? So you came in 1997, 1998. Now this was 2000. What? You're an E8 already? Three up, three down.
Yep, yeah, I picked up Mass Sergeant in July 2013.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So you had to have when you were back stateside though, in order to become that, I mean, you still had to deal with professional training and everything else to get up there, selections and promotions and billets back home and all that, man. So you were busy. You were busy,
Yeah,
right?
2010, 2012, like when we came back to Buford, I was making hay. Had to get myself squared away with those quals as a gunny. The gunnery sergeant's course had to
Mhm.
go to that. And that's when we welcomed our third kid in 2012. So that was
The
that
fourth
three
was
years was yeah, that 3 years was we were making hay, and like it went really, really fast.
okay.
Um, Very stressful. I think that was probably the first time I started realizing that I was getting burned out, but I didn't
Mm,
want to accept it. Just keep pushing, and
yeah.
especially when I got selected a mass sergeant. I mean, I never wanted to be that mass sergeant that I'd already seen in my life. The guy that maybe showed up to work, maybe didn't. The guy that maybe came in at 9, maybe made it to lunch, maybe put his uniform on.
Right.
I was never going to be that person. And it was I was again, I felt so blessed and so fortunate to be selected for that rank that I was gonna do everything in my power to make sure that people under me, I was going to lead by example.
Yeah,
I
you
was
were
going to
present.
be and do the right thing and hold my staff and COs accountable. And I had a lot of staff and COs that didn't like me, I don't think, but
Oh well.
it is what it was. It is what it was because I was gonna be harder on them than I was my junior Marines because I could see the guys who showed up and who didn't show up. That again, I was never the person that says, no, you can't go take your kid to an appointment. But when they've got, you know, 17 appointments a week, that's kind of a weird thing, especially if there's nothing wrong with them. And all this stuff that's always going on. And so it was a great opportunity, but I learned a lot because I said to
Good.
get thrust into that, yeah, thrust into that role in Afghanistan. I quickly realized that I was weak in some certain aspects of being a leader in the sense that like organizing and maybe creating and setting
Mhm.
a op tempo.
Okay.
And so I was learning on the fly. It was a very tough transition with my CO, but at the end of the day, we're actually still really, really good friends. We became much stronger together throughout that deployment, but because I think I pushed myself and challenged myself to not just tell the guy to F off and do it my way, but I'm always been kind of a humble person, and I quickly realized that I was almost in over my head. So I leaned on my my XO, again, my good friend of mine who's a Marine officer, ATC officer, and he helped me out, get me sorted, and I, I think I thrived by the end of the deployment. But again, I wasn't going to fail because I had too many people relying on me, and I couldn't do that. So the Marines deserve so much better than what I was going bringing to the table. But
Mm.
I think walking out of there, I think we all ended up a much stronger unit. So
Right. Right. So you picked up your master sergeant in 2014, right? So what was that like for you going, because that's a definite career. You only got one other option, right?
yep.
You got two options career-wise, right? And as far as the Marine Corps is concerned. So were you looking at staying in to try and get, do you become an 89, or was that an option for you, the first sergeant route or sergeant major, or staying in within the MOS and becoming a master of guns? I mean, how did that look like for you? What decisions did you make?
Yeah, I never. So my career path was unique. I never actually got the opportunity to do a B billet. At the time with being a young sergeant, staff sergeant,
Yeah.
our MOS was almost completely off limits to B billets because we were so short staffed.
Yep.
So never got to do drill field, never did recruiting. Got screened for 'em multiple times, volunteered for the drill field, but hey, you got calls, you're not leaving. The monitor wasn't cutting us out, so um, it was kind of frustrated with that. I wanted to do MSG, especially after I came back from Kyrgyzstan because we met the MSG Marines out there. But I was a married sergeant. I couldn't go. I didn't know that. I had to be a staff sergeant. But again, at that time I kind of progressed and I was like, okay, well that window's closing. So, I was making hay in the MOS. Um, so yeah, so as being a master, and I think I always kind of knew I was going to go that route.
Okay.
I was really surprised. I guess I was kind of taken aback that I got promoted relatively quickly. I didn't think that I would even have a chance that board that I went through that I got selected on. So ended up only being four of us that got selected,
Cool.
and again, that was when it was like, okay, hey, got selected. There's a spot in Yuma, Arizona at the Max One detachment out there at P111, and so that's where you're going. Like, cool. Never been to Yuma. Let's give it a whirl. So again, the wife and I packed it up, headed out west, and again, that was my first chance to be a detachment staff NCOIC. So again, great experience because again, I had some guys out there that I had known. Some of the maintainers that worked with me were guys that I deployed to Kyrgyzstan with. Again, we're a very, very small community. So I had people there that I already knew from Buford, from deployments. Shoot, one of the maintenance officer was, we were corporals together, and they were warrant officers, but we were corporals together. So like, it was such a great opportunity to walk into because I had people I was familiar with.
Okay.
And it was, yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot better
Now,
than I thought it was going to be.
cool. Now, were you keeping your skills sharp at all up in a tower, or were you just done with that type of work?
Yeah, I was sneaking out on some of the FARP exercises and stuff
Okay.
whenever they needed a local qual, and some of the guys weren't there. I was like, "Oh, top will go." But yeah, at that point, I'm not really working the position anymore.
Okay.
We're pretty much in administrative roles.
Yeah.
That kind of sucked. I maintained my upchit, my flight physical that we're required to
Right.
maintain because
Yeah, your medical.
I didn't want to miss out on any opportunities if they arose.
All right. So how was Yuma, man? Did you guys enjoy it?
I did. I really liked it a lot. Summers were hot, but like I said, it's just a different kind of hot than the other places we've all been to, and I know why they train out there. It's very similar to Afghanistan. Even especially out at P111, it's like holy smokes, I'm deployed again. But again, that was a great experience because you know I think my wife kind of like started her profession, her side job. She became a beautician.
Okay.
She went to the Yuma School of Beauty out there, which is like I guess one of the nationally renowned ones. But made a lot of really good friends out there. I mean, I got into home brewing out there, which is a weird thing, but man, some of the guys I met out there, retired guys, a whole bunch of snowbirds that came from like Michigan area. We were talking about folks from GM.
Mhm.
There was like five dudes that were all retired GM employees that came down there, and just great dudes. Like my friends crowd was all like 25 years older than me.
Yeah, there's a bunch of
Because they're at the top.
Canadians down there too, right?
Oh yeah, yep,
Yeah, we
yep,
call them snow Mexicans, but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
there's a whole bunch of Canadians down there too in that area, man, that are the trunk slammers of snowbirds and all that, and the guys from up
yep.
around. So you had a good experience in Yuma, right? Any problems, any challenges, anything at all?
I think for me, the biggest challenge out there was because again, the school we had the kids in was awesome. I mean, we had our third kid by that point. He was basically a baby as we were traveling. Excuse me. He was like less than a year old when we first had to drive across country, but um, so he kind of got grow up out there. For me, the biggest challenge that coming back from Afghanistan that second time, something triggered me out there. I don't know what it was. I think it really had to do, like I told you, I really felt the stress a lot of bringing every one of those people home. And I just knew that I didn't have a job, or I didn't have a skill set that if it came down to it, it was my job to go out there hooking and jabbing, that I could absolutely like ensure like, hey, I'm going to pull the trigger, do this or that to make sure that my guys come home. That wasn't our
Well, I
mission,
mean,
you know?
well, hold on. I mean, if we just have a little side conversation, because where Camp Bastion happened up there, and
Oh yeah, no, yep,
and I,
yeah, Lieutenant
it's,
Colonel Rabel and his crew.
yeah, it's just one of those things. And for people who don't know, we had an air base, right? I mean, we'll just take it down as simple as possible. They weren't expecting it. People, the air base got overran. It got attacked. People snuck in. They were causing all kinds of havoc. And you had people who went to bed that night. They were not expected to be in dealing with death and destruction and, that type of attack. So when you have something like that take place and then you're somewhere else, right? I mean, and those guys kicked ass. I will never allow anyone to change my mind on how those Marines and those British stood up that night and the way they were able to take aircraft off under fire and shoot on their own positions in order to kill the attackers. But I'll let the other people go up and look up that battle. What happened that night. But when you have incidences like that happen in Afghanistan and you're over here, that's got to weigh heavy on you, man. Like, fuck, man, what if? That's got to be a pressure that comes on. And we had other insider attacks that have been taking place, for years prior too. So you never know. I mean, you and I know people very well that were around when things like that happened, man. And so that's got to take, like, you're looking around, you got Lance Corporal over here, you got, corporal guy, you got sergeant, you got your staff sergeant, you got a major, you got all these people that you got, these relationships with. And then when it happens, it's a pressure that that's always on your mind, man. And that could just wear you down, just wondering if today's the day that I'm going to have to stand up. Is today the day something like that's going to happen to me? Right. So I mean, it's got to weigh heavy on your heart. It's got to weigh heavy on your brain, constantly thinking about it, because when you get into a position of leadership, everything changes. It's not about you anymore, man. It's about all the other people. And it's a heavy rucksack to carry, man. So,
Yep, and absolutely, and that was again that event, weighed heavily on our minds when we went there, and we ensured to brief the Marines, understands like, look, something like that could happen again, especially now the fact that the base was operating at like 50% capacity, the security levels were down just because there weren't that many people there. You know, we understood that the opportunity for it to happen again was very real. So it's like almost like you're just waiting constantly for something to happen. And again, it didn't help the fact that I was constantly reading the SIPR reviews and stuff like that of the reports. And it's simply because my Marines were constantly traveling. And I wanted to make sure that they weren't going into something that we didn't know about and I could set them up for the best success. And it was just like, that was where I started eating melatonin like candy. I was just trying to do anything I could to sleep because it was
mhm,
like I couldn't, I could not get my brain to shut down long enough to like just relax. And it was like it can be at peace with like, hey, I'm going to bed, and if order comes to the thing, ain't nothing I can do about it. Just gonna have to catch it, I guess, and wake up in heaven, hopefully. But yeah, just that day to day was like anytime the Marines traveled and stuff, and just thinking that like, yeah, is today the day it's gonna happen? And we ran drills and we made sure everybody had their stuff and their gear on them, and they were prepared the best they could be. Because again, we realized we weren't well versed in squad tactics. We weren't well versed at moving together in a intentional manner to assault or something. Really, we just knew that if something happened, we were going to be on the defensive
right.
until the security forces got there. And we just had to do what we could to keep ourselves breathing. So yeah, so again, we were very very fortunate that didn't happen. The move to Kandahar, yeah, was very stressful because we quickly realized that the Army does not have the same standards of security that the Marine Corps does. I mean, there was people breaching their wires every night there, but they didn't care because they're like, well, they're just stealing food and supplies, so we're not gonna shoot at them. I was like, holy smokes, man! It was a little stressful, and Kandahar. And if you ever got up there, but that was the same thing. It was just a huge city, so many different forces and so many different branches up there. I mean, it's like you couldn't walk from one end to the other. It was so big. So,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, just again, I mean, we had one night up there too where it was, you know, my CO came banging on my door, and I had God, I ate so many melatonin. I don't even hardly remember him coming to the door. I was pretty out of it. He thought I'd been drinking because he's like, "Dude, what's up with you?" I was like, "I promise I haven't been drinking. I was about to go to sleep finally." but it would, as luck would have it, yeah, there was some stuff, some forces massing on the backside of the base and stuff. So we were just getting prepared because we were on that side of it, and we're like, oh crap, this is the night it's going to happen. We had people kind of spread out between officer and enlisted cans and stuff. So trying to scare everybody together and say, look, if this is going to happen, we're going to be together because we want to know where everybody is. But nothing. Security forces took care of it. Nothing ended up coming out of the base, but it was just like that was like the last straw at that point. We're like, man, we're 2 weeks from going home, and it was just like at that point, I pretty much didn't sleep that last couple weeks.
Mm.
So yeah, so coming home, that was probably the first time I had the really really tough transition. I think I was just so burned out. Um, I wasn't going to call it PTSD because I'm like, well, I didn't get shot at, so it can't be that. It can't be anything. It's just this, maybe
You're
I'm
just
I'm
fried.
just stressed out.
You're
Yeah, I'm
just
just stressed
fried.
out, fried out, whatever. Yeah, came home. Obviously I'd been home brewing, so I cracked into some of my home brew and started drinking, and it's like, all right, I can take the weight off a little bit. And I think I'd been home like a week, and my wife was going to take my two older kids out to they were like Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. She goes, "You gonna be good with the little one?" I was like, "Oh, absolutely. We'll just hang out. We'll play together and watch some cartoons or something like that." It was gonna be fine. I'd had a few beers, wasn't no big deal. And, well, then I had a few more beers and a few more beers, and they were out for a couple hours. Well, then I got really tired, and then the baby was passing out anyway, so I put him in bed and laid down next to him. But I didn't realize it at the time, but I had become so overly sensitive to security in my family and my house because, again, when we were in Afghanistan, that was also the time when they started threatening active duty service members by ISIS and stuff at stateside. And if you remember that, so like said, anybody with a sticker on their car is a target. And so again, I can't do anything about this. I'm just like, holy crap. My wife at least knows about it. She's a Marine, but it's like, man, we're right on the Mexico border. Like that border in Yuma is it's pretty nefarious at times. Shoot, two streets over, one of the houses got raided and they pulled a bunch of drugs and smugglers and stuff out of there. So it was crazy. But I'd double check the doors, lock everything up, pass out. I guess I had a nightmare or something like that. But then what I woke up to is my wife banging on the door. I didn't know it was them. I was, again, had been drinking pretty good, checked the baby. But for whatever reason, the first thing by the time I got to the door and kind of realized what was going on, I had my gun in my hand and I'm ready to like level it out the door at
Mm.
whoever's there. My wife's like, Jesus, what are you doing? And I just kind of like came to, the kids were scared. I was like, no, no, everything's fine, guys. Everything's fine. It's not loaded. It's not loaded. I lied to him. I was like, I was just making sure it wasn't nobody and get everybody in the house and, get them to bed. And then so me and the wife were talking. She's like, what was that all about? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really remember how it all kind of came happen. I just started moving, made sure the baby was good. And so we started talking. And again, I was like, man, I got to have another drink. And I sit down to have this beer and we're talking. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm
Were
totally fine.
you were you being honest with her when you told her you don't know? So your wife had asked you, what the hell was that? And you gave her a response where were you being honest with that when you said you don't know, or did you actually know what was going on?
Oh yeah, I was totally not honest with her, and I said, yeah, I was fine, and then proceeded to pretty much break down in the driveway. That's the first time I think I'd ever been like totally vulnerable and just totally. It was like it all came out. Anything that I'd been holding for however many years just kind of spilled out.
Had it been a huge moment, huh?
Well, it was, and I just told her, I said, I'm so worried about everybody. I want to make sure they're okay. And I said, and I everybody's home and I'm so happy now, but I just was so, it was just, again, it was the overwhelming just relief of finally being home in my own house and everybody else was finally home. And I think that weight just finally it just ccame off, um,
And that
in a
goes
way though,
back
where I was
to
kind of burned out.
Yeah, and that reminds me. I mean, that goes back to you back in the day before you joined the Marine Corps, wanting to make sure that everyone around you was taken care of and everyone's okay. I mean, you were bouncing checks way back in the day, making sure people were good, right? And then
Yeah.
now here you are, 15, 16, 18 years later with the same mindset, making sure that the people in your life were taken care of, man. So this is nothing new for you. Want to make sure that people were well.
hmm And again, at this time, I still feel like I'm relatively good shape. I'm still kind of in control of everything. Um, still ignoring. I'd received multiple concussions, injuries, brain injuries while I was on active duty. A couple different time training events, stuff like that. Had some bad nerve damage in my arm when I was a younger Marine. bad nerve damage in my hip. So I also had some physical things, and that I just, you know how it is, man. You just work through it. Like, I'm not going to show any weakness. I'm just going to keep drinking as much alcohol as I can to go to bed, and I'm going to drink as much caffeine as I can to stay awake, and just keep that cycle going because that's normal. And I'm fine, and there's nothing wrong with me as long as everybody else is okay. I'm good. So that was like the first time I think that it actually kind of hit me. Um, and so within about a week of that, again, I was still kind of on leave, coming back from that deployment. So one of the first days back, I went and talked to my chaplain. Air traffic control is one of those weird MOSs where very similar to pilots. That, you say there's anything wrong with you, you're going to lose your flight status, and they're going to start picking and prodding at you and everything else like that.
Yep.
So,
Very aware.
yep, all of us, for the most part, compartmentalize it, and we take care of each other the best we can, and to work around that. But again, I understand that flight techs have a job to do. The jobs we do are very dangerous for other people. When I joke with the pilots, like, hey, if pilot will say, yeah, if I make a mistake, I die. He goes, but if you controllers make a mistake, I die. And he goes, and what happens to you? I was like, well, I go to prison. But
Yeah.
I'd almost rather be dead at that point if I caused you to lose your life. It's one of those things. You just have all these people. It's just a very stressful job. So I think, again, ultimately, by that point, 15 years of my life, but everything kind of came crashing down at that point. But the chaps is a great resource, as you well know. So I was able to kind of get some things out with him, and convince myself that I wasn't an alcoholic, convince myself that I was going to be fine. I just needed a break, whatever that break was. So at the time, the break was, hey, I'm going to homebrew and drink all the beer I make. So that's relaxing, right? It's calm. There's a process to it, and
Well,
yeah. So
hold on, man. The process of, this is something that I like to talk about, and I'm not an expert on PTSD or anything else like that. I'm not a mental health guy, but I always like to look at what is separating the veteran from their stress, from their PTSD, from their trauma. What is taking them out of that realm of negativity, of thought, of their constant cycle of dealing with whatever issues they're dealing with. And some of the past guests I've got on with their foundations, whether it be the notify guys with the we defy guys with the jiu-jitsu, and Russell with the work he's doing with Warriors of Nature. So when you're homebrewing, right, it's a process like you mentioned, right? You have to pay attention to each step. And if you screw any of those steps up, then the end product is going to be screwed up, right?
yep, absolutely.
So when you're struggling, and I hate saying that word struggle, man.
Yeah,
It's just not
well, that's what
something
it
that
is,
I'm
though.
yeah, but it's not something I'm comfortable with talking to veterans that are
Yeah,
going through stuff, man. It's just because it's I don't know what it is, man. It is just something I hate saying to you guys, like you're struggling, like it's a bad thing. I mean, it's not that, but it's so when you're home brewing, right? You are getting ingredients together, you're setting temperatures, you're getting gas going, you're getting these copper coils going and everything else, and it's taking your mind away from whatever's bothering you, right? And it's just that little moment in time when you're separated from everything. And
yep.
so I get it. It's like this is my thing that has taken me away from that, you know? So I mean, so from that point of view, I wish I could say it, and I had a great guest on, Alan Steinar, many episodes ago, where we all like to say, "I understand," like I get it, but do we really? Should we even be saying that? So when I see you guys that have these issues that you're dealing with, when you get involved with something that takes your mind away from something, I mean, so for that little moment of time, I mean, I get it. I like to, I mean, I shouldn't. Alan's going to tell me, hey, man, no, you don't get it because you're not dealing with it. But, however, it's taking your brain away. It's taking your soul out of whatever you're dealing with, and it's put you in someplace else where you got to make sure that all those things are lined up so you're not screwing up the end product. And so for that little moment in time when you guys are brewing and, whatever, it's just got to, I would think that's got to be helpful in a time, even though the end product means you're drinking, and you're abusing the alcohol or whatnot. I just, for that little moment in time where you're getting everything set up, I would just think that, you got to think it's helpful.
Oh, dude, it was very therapeutic. Like I said, honestly, it's like 60 or 70% of it's cleaning, which is weird, but hey, as Marines, we're good at that, right? But no, honestly, it was very therapeutic in the sense that, again, it's a very tight community. It's another community of folks that, like, are amazing people.
You're
from
talking
all
about
walks
the
of life.
you're talking about the
Yeah.
Bruin community?
Yeah. We'd get
Okay.
together and do brew days and stuff like that. And again, I get my buddy Travis, he was an old Harrier mechanic,
Okay.
retired in Yuma. His wife's from Mexico and stuff. Great people, but he basically established a homebrew community there and a homebrew store. But we had brewed at his house and stuff like that, or we do it at the local brewery and stuff. And it was just again all the retirees, all the folks that came together. It was such a cool meshing of folks that were all kind of involved in this process, and everybody was kind of doing it for their
Cool.
own reasons.
Right.
And again, but that's for me, it was very therapeutic because it was I could see this process through from beginning to end. I just wish I wasn't an alcoholic at this point. I mean, because it's one of those things. I think I'd love to do it still. I'll be honest, I made some pretty good beer. But it was just like the whole process of it was so awesome, and I kind of wish I could still do it. I just know that I'm an alcoholic and that I don't need to be around that stuff. So, but I've replaced it with guitar, as we quickly talked about briefly before.
I know I
Again,
told
I
my
found
wife, I know you and I were talking. It's like, we got to stay on track. We got to stay
yep,
on your service. We got to stay on the podcast. And
yep,
why we're here, because I know you and I, between the aviation and the guitars and the metal music and everything else,
yeah,
I'm like, man, you
yeah,
and I could sit down and just have a separate show just about that. It would be kick ass. So, yeah,
yep.
man, I'm glad you found all that. So,
But yeah, again, I've replaced the homebrewing with learning guitar because it's again, you know, as well as I do, it's very, very it's a process, you know, and you
it is.
have to do certain things to do other things good, and it has to go from A to B, and you can't just jump to Z. You know, the end product, and it's almost like golf. I mean, you chase it forever and never ever really master it. And I think
Right.
that's why I like it. So, but
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time, again, homebrewing was my outlet, and it was again, if I could have controlled the drinking, it would have. I think it would have done fine for me because that was my moment of peace. Um, so yeah, so we got through that moment there in Yuma, and it was again, it was a good deployment, but I was pretty burned out by the end of that one. Again, I really pushed myself and I really challenged myself, and I think that's probably the hardest I ever was on myself with the billets I had and stuff out there. But I had again a great command. I was out there with. I still talk to the sergeant major I was with, even the CEO and stuff like that. We still keep in touch occasionally. So it's like it was a really good community. Um, but from there, after that deployment. Uh, One of my buddies was actually dropped papers without they couldn't realize it, but he was retiring from Marine Corps Installations West, and that billet for the Mass Sergeant for Air Traffic Control was like the lead inspector for the West Coast,
Okay.
and so they monitor hit me up. It's like, hey, do you want that billet? And I told him when I went to Yuma, I was like, look, just leave me here for the 4 years. I'm going to retire. You know, just leave me here as long as you need me to get me to my EAS and retirement date, and I'll pull chocks, and you guys can leave. You know, if you need to leave me here for 5 years, whatever it is to get to my 20, I'll stay here because and my wife and I had already agreed on that. We didn't want to move again, but that opportunity in Pendleton came up, ended up having to
Mm,
extend another few months. But my wife, I asked her, and she said, "Do it. I want to go to Pendleton. I want to go to California." So we went from being settled to one more move. Which again, it was a weird one too because I was out there for like 2 years, and the family came back a little bit early because the kids had to start school and everything. Because I knew I was staring down the barrel at that point of my retirement stuff. But again, you'd alluded to it earlier. At that point, I didn't realize it was going to happen, but I was literally staring, you know, E9 potential E9 in the face. It was coming up that year. My mentors in the E9 community were awesome. Again, good friends of mine. They said, "Dude, just stay and do it, man. You're gonna get it. You're probably gonna be the one, if not this year, next year." But you know, my wife and I already had our plan, and I had this pipe dream in my head that's like, my kids need some place to be. They need what I had. I want them to have X amount of years in the same location. This time they're middle schoolers. I said I want them to start with some kids in middle school, high school, and finish all together. My wife and I agreed that was the best thing. So we got our bills paid down, got everything sorted out. We still had our house, believe it or not, in Yemassee here outside of Beaufort's,
oh,
the one we bought in '05 together. So we had a place to come to. I didn't have a job yet, but she knew a lot of people here. She loved it here. We kind of became our second home, or it was going to become our home. But um, we were very comfortable with it. So we knew no matter what that was after the Marine Corps, I didn't know what I was going to do for sure. We could at least start here, you know. So I ended up sending them back a little bit early, and then that last 2 years, yeah, I basically spent inspecting and stuff like that. But unfortunately, again, California, you know as well as I do, the craft beer culture out there is phenomenal, and I became even a much heavier drinker. That's probably the heaviest I ever drank in my entire career because at that point now I was basically responsible for myself. Man, I was the junior guy in the office.
so let's talk about that, man, if you don't
Yep.
mind.
Yeah.
What was your wife picking up on your drinking? Was she challenging it all on it, or were you flying? Were you? Did you think you were keeping it together, or did it just seem
Yeah.
like
That
a
was.
social thing for you, or was it impacting things and you were good at explaining, hiding, or I mean, what?
Oh yeah, I was doing a good job. Well, see, it was kind of easy to cheat that because I could use as an excuse because neither one of us like traffic, and so leaving the gate of Pendleton was just a torture to try to
Yeah.
go anywhere on the 5 or on the 15 because it's just traffic nonstop there. It's great. It doesn't make any sense. And so I would use that as an excuse, like, oh yeah, that's why we're not going out to do anything fun. Traffic's bad. We'll just stay here. We'll cut across and go to Del Mar Beach. You can always drink at the beach. And the thing about California, it feels like you're on vacation all the time. And it doesn't feel like you go to work. And and so it was just the culture. Everything was chill, pretty laid back, and it was just another reason for me to like come home and crack it, And I was definitely going pretty hard in the paint on the weekends and stuff like that. And it was to the point where she's like, "Hey, you probably, I think you're having too much or whatever." And then that's when I started going to the garage. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'll just have, one beer in the house, but I'd sneak three in the garage." So then
Mhm.
I kind of realized, like, is this really a problem or is it just me being an idiot? Because I don't want my wife to hassle me. Again, I was still pulling dad duties, man. We were getting up early for t-ball practice and soccer, and I was hungover like a son of a gun. But again, what do we do? Alcohol at night to sleep, caffeine all freaking day to stay awake, to get my task
Cycle.
done. I was a present dad. I didn't beat on my wife or kids. I wasn't that way. It was just that was my outlet to try to shut my brain off at night and sleep because I was still just I could not get out of my head some of those those kids and those poor families and stuff that we
Yeah.
kind of I don't say we left behind. We thought we did our best, but it was just dang it. And then I would look at my own kids and those feelings would come rushing back from me being a kid and not having a dad around or a mom around at times or and thinking like I'd get that anger inside of me and like why how could anybody leave these awesome people like these kids are so great. And so yeah, I think I just got in my own head and it became that vicious cycle because again this time I'm getting a little bit older, a couple more injuries, and I busted up my kneecap real bad playing football with the Marines in Yuma. So now I'm mid-30s now, I'm not healing as fast, so my body's kind of starting to really tell me like, hey, there's something going on here. I just ignored it. I ignored it and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing because retirement was right there. And again, I just thought that was the thing to do. I was like, hey, I got a year left. I did it for 19. I can do it for one more. And again, I was very fortunate to have a great office I worked with, a couple of retirees, an amazing lieutenant colonel that just was a great mentor for me out there. He was like basically the airspace guy for the West Coast. But we went to all of our conferences together and traveled together and stuff, and all of our
Yeah.
inspections. And just I made a really good. He was a great friend. He was a great dude and great mentor. Um, and so that kind of kept it together because, like I said, I was a junior guy in the office as a master sergeant. So, but I was responsible for setting up all the trips and everything else like that. So I still had people to take care of, and I was able to keep myself focused that way. When I inspected the facilities, I was like there to not punish them for things they were missing, but to help mentor the other master sergeants and make sure their facilities are doing what they're supposed to and staying in the letter of the law. So, again, that sense of purpose was still there. But again, I was really starting to mask a lot of burnout and a lot of physical ailments and stuff that I just didn't. I didn't want to take pills. I've been
Yeah.
anti-medication my entire life. I already knew, as well as I do. I go to medical, they're going to give me Motrin, change your socks, and go to physical therapy. And it's just like, God dang it, I'm not doing that again because it doesn't work. And so again, I'm starting to. I don't realize it at this point, but I think at that, looking back on it now, that is the point. That 3 or 4 year window there towards the end of my career was when my brain and my body were screaming at me to do something, and I was just too ignorant to look that way. And I only thought that the only way I could do it would be with medication, and I didn't want to touch meds. I didn't want to do anything like that. Obviously, again, on a flight status, can't touch a lot of that stuff. Um, I just refused to look any further than the Navy doctors. And again, they don't know that. I mean, I don't blame them at all because I didn't tell them the truth. you know, I was hiding most of what was going on with me. I'm just saying, oh yeah, I got some back pain or whatever. And what we're going to do for it. Um, and so I was never really truthful with myself. And so that led to a lot of the, you know, what again, as I retired in 2018, got through that. We got back here. I was fortunate enough to get hired on as a civilian here, air traffic controller.
Mm.
Um, and again, we're not allowed to abuse alcohol. I mean, we're 12 hours bottle throttle type stuff, and that's a rule that I would never break. As much of an alcoholic as I was, I can tell you right now, I never broke that rule. Pushed it, but I never ever for once,
Yeah.
went inside of that rule because again, I wouldn't allow myself to do that. I had too much respect for the job and too much respect for the people I work with to ever do that. But I definitely pushed it, and I definitely probably wasn't in the right best mindset some days. Um, but by that point, I had stopped exercising, you know, kind of alone and unafraid. I worked with the guys I worked with, but I went home and I didn't have any real, I guess, say friends to hang out with. Didn't associate with the Marines anymore. So I immediately, again, looking back on it, that is when I thought staying on a military installation and working around Marines would ease the transition. Probably kind of made it harder because my sense of purpose was gone. None of those Marines knew me as Master Sergeant Cook, and I never made them call me that. I mean, some of them are like, "Oh, hey, do you know he was a retired Master Sergeant?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh," and they start acting weird around me. I'm like, "God dang it, I'm not that. I'm just Justin. I'm just Mr. Cook. I show up, I train you on position, and I go home." Yeah, that sense of purpose, trying to find that again. And yeah, I was still doing my job. I mean, I love the job of air traffic control. It's safe, orderly, expeditious movement of people, with lives at stake every day, trying to do the right thing. It's a very gratifying and satisfying job. Stressful at times,
Yeah.
but it's very gratifying. But again, for some reason, something started missing, and the pain, physical pain that I was starting to feel as my body kind of started to deteriorate because I stopped taking care of it. Gained some weight, really, really started hitting the bottle hard. That's really kind of that was the was 2018 after my retirement. That year was brutal, absolutely brutal. Man, I started having the outbursts. Man, we moved into our new house, and I just blew up one day on my wife and throwing boxes, and I couldn't control myself. Like I literally couldn't breathe. I was just screaming at the top of my lungs in the garage and like smashing boxes and stuff. And dude, like I'd never been that way. I was kind of been the chill dude. Little chippy, little chippy. I'll talk a little smack, but for the most part, I completely lost all composure and scared my wife.
Mm.
But I don't know where it came from. I think again, it was just the stuff had been pending for years, and it finally just happened. Yeah, so we kind of keep going, and then it was Christmas, 2 days after Christmas in 2019. Was when I finally quit. It was just one of those nights I went and hung out with my buddy up the street. He's a retired Marine as well. I never drink liquor. I only drink beer. Did some whiskey with him, and I woke up in my golf cart in my garage, like just hanging out the side of it. 42 years old, beautiful family, kids in the house. A couple days after Christmas, and I'm just a frickin' slobbering mess. And I sat up, and the whole like left side of my body was like numb because that I'd been on my neck or whatever, and I was like, I'm done, man. I can't do this anymore. Like I cannot do this. Went and talked to my wife and said, honey, I'm done. I've got to be done. I can't do this anymore. Can you help me? She said, absolutely. She goes, if you feel like you can't do it anymore, she goes, I was wondering where you were last night. And again, I think that set everything in motion. But unfortunately, that time, excuse me, at that time, I didn't have all the pieces in place that I needed. My stool of recovery, I guess I look at it that way, only had one leg. And that leg was my wife saying, yeah, I'll support you in you're quitting drinking. But as well as I do, a one legged stool isn't very stable, right? So I had to humble myself very quickly because within a few months, the physical pains that I'd been covering, um, the sleep I thought I was getting was no longer happening, and the pain was just becoming literally unbearable. Like
Mm.
it was nuts, man. Like to the point where bring tears to my eyes, and I just could hardly get in and out of the car. And I'm early 40s, and I can barely move. Um, and she's like, "Well, why don't you go to the VA?" I'm like, I've already checked in with the VA. I'm not taking pills. I'm not going to do this. So I went and talked to one of the therapists there, and Miss Patty Locks. I'll never forget her name because she she was able to kind of get me through that wall of exploring options to heal and do other things and get my life kind of together. She too was a recovering alcoholic, so we really connected in that sense. So she could talk to me, and kind of call me out of my BS when I said, "Oh, I'm not really. I think I'll just start drinking again. I'm good because my body hurts." And excuse me. And yeah, that was kind of the catalyst to where it put me in a rough 2 years because I was recovering, but I felt like I was getting worse. I just couldn't get ahead. That summer of 2000, I'd been like sober like 6 months, planning a trip down to Cape Canaveral with the family, do some yard work the day before. I hadn't been drinking, everything. I'd picked up a guitar by this point with my wife and kid. We're all kind of playing, jamming around or whatever. So I go out and do some yard work. Um, Didn't have any lighter fluid left. I was like, "Man, I forgot my lighter fluid. I can't find it. I guess we used it up last week." So I was like, "I'm just gonna put a little gas on the backside of this burn pit, put a little bit back there, put the gas can out, walked around for a couple more minutes to get the fumes out of there, went back over and lit it, and the thing blew up on me. Uh, Ended up with deep second-degree burns, spent 3 days in a burn center in Augusta, Georgia. Um, Fortunately, never got any accelerant on my body or in my lungs, but, just, like, roasted
Flash.
myself, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
set me down for another week. Well, unfortunately for that, it was, um, the pain pills they gave me.
Mm.
I was on some pretty heavy stuff for a while, for about 12 days. Believe it or not, I healed up pretty quick because I was very lucky, I guess, since I didn't get a lot of dirt and stuff in me, but it was just like, man, here I am trying to get ahead in life, and then this happens. So it set me back at work a little bit, kind of set me back into that really, really heavy depression stage where I was working my way out of. And I was like, I'm just going to start drinking again. And my wife's like, Justin, please don't. Like, don't do it because you can do something else. And so at this point, I'm just grasping at straws. I'm trying to do anything to try to turn my life around. Again, I'm doing well at work, working fine. I mean, don't have any problems there. Don't have any real family problems. And personally, like I'm just my body and my mind are just an absolute mess. I've never ever had the ability to like take care of myself, I guess. And so here I am, and 43 years old, going, how do I take care of myself? Which again, I think is something that veterans and probably men in general have a hard time with. Asking for help, finding things, finding a way to get yourself better. So again, I ate some humble pie. Um, Been kicking around wanting to start like a side hustle, side business, with my wife. And, I was like, man, I want to get something else. Maybe again, something I can do. I can give back to somebody else. Maybe build something up for my kids, see if they want to do it. And just digging around on social media and came across We Defy the Norm and Cody Alford's group. If you're familiar with Cody, he and I actually were in the gunnies course together. Didn't know each other well, but we associated obviously for that month or whatever. And I was like, and that was back in like 2011. So I'm like, oh man, this dude's. I remember him, but he's telling his story about how he had a really tough transition out. Retired, medically retired, youngest master sergeant in the Marine Corps, I think. Got shot in the head back when he was a corporal, lance corporal, and dude was just like living in a van and just figuring out his life, you know? And so I really resonated with that because it felt like he was going through things in a kind of a different manner than I was, but he was also finding his way. But his thing is he was fucking doing it and I wasn't. So I actually signed up for his group. It was online, like a mentorship group. Fortunate that was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life because I
Awesome.
met so many cool people through that. That again, we still talk to this day. And Cody even said, even though the group doesn't exist, he goes, "That's what I was building it for, man. It was a community for you guys to support each other and take care of each other from here on out."
Well, it still
Um,
exists though, right?
oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
His
not
his
online.
his his brand does. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
but
no, yeah,
but I mean that group it still exists because you
it
still
does
have people that you're staying in contact with. So I don't.
absolutely.
All right.
Yep, and so, yeah, so that was huge because, I started to explore, that was where I first got introduced to the opportunity to go to the Resiliency Brain Clinic down in Texas, um, through him. But, again, I started exploring with some other, like, types of just getting my body back, man. The physical trainer that was with us, Rebecca Rouse, absolutely phenomenal, man. She was so huge on sleep and diet, got me squared away on that stuff, and that was just stuff that I was like, "Man, I didn't even realize I was that jacked up." Um, and so then I start making these little wins, this little win here, a little win here. Um, Got accepted to go to the brain clinic for 2 weeks, and that event there changed my freaking life. That was boy, that was a game changer, but prior to that, had finally gone and got my blood work done, um, and I realized that my testosterone was, like, down bad, and I was, like, completely out of whack. Everything was bad, but also that my iron, I was almost completely depleted in iron, which was another thing. I was, like, been feeling tired, been exhausted, couldn't work out. I had severe anemia. I was, like, I guess, apparently months from, maybe not being around anymore. I had to get a bunch of iron infusions, got to get a blood transplant or infusion because it was, like, I was so low. Come to find out I had some internal bleeding that had been going on for years. I was just blowing it off, though. I was like, "Ah, it's just a little bit of blood. It's no big deal." That happens to dudes when you use the bathroom every once in a while. No big deal. Well, apparently it was a lot more than a little,
Mm,
and just been depleting my body. So anyway, get that surgery sorted out, get everything done, and then suddenly I start stacking these tiny little wins. I get the
awesome.
opportunity to go to the brain clinic. changes my life. I met two amazing people there, Christina and Justin. Still talk to this day. A couple other amazing veterans that I want to give you their contact information because they're doing amazing things in the veteran community, and they would be amazing guests for you. Um, the amazing team down there, though, with Doc G and everybody there. It literally rewired my brain, changed my diet, got things sorted out. But again, we're going through approaches that don't involve medication. It involves changes to your diet, how you function daily, exercises with your eyes and brain,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Lifestyle.
Finding out that we're not as broken as we really think we feel we are. We're just, a lot of my injuries and stuff were had to do with a lot of the brain injuries and concussions that I had over my life. A lot of those stemmed from that. Once I got that stuff sorted out, the pain started to kind of go away. I was able to manage it a lot better um, without medication. I think we kind of mentioned it, the ice bath, man, that became my thing. Like it gives me this absolute peace and I can do it and go to sleep. But it's for whatever reason, maybe as I love the cold, I don't like the heat, don't really respond the same in saunas, but the ice bath became my outlet to kind of like shut my body down for 3 to 5 minutes and just take the pain and the stress off of my body. And again, it was another stool, or I'm sorry, another leg under that stool, where I feel like my stool has like 55 legs now, and it's the sturdiest it's ever been in my life. But it's because of these other resources that I encountered along the way. And I kind of saved the best for last in this sense. But Operation Patriot's fob, rocking their shirt here. Um, Early in my recovery process, I went to experience it. I thought, man, everybody here is so happy. At the time, I was down hard. I was like, man, these people are here too happy, too joyous. I can't deal with this, man. I just can't people like this. Too many people, too much stuff. I can't do this. I'm not doing it. So I didn't come back for like 5, 6 months.
Mm.
But in that 6 months, I matured and I healed more. And I realized that sense of community, I needed that again. And so I went back
That
and it's
sense of
become a huge part of my life. It was kind of
that's
like
You mentioned
the,
like missing a sense of purpose, right?
yeah,
So did the guys over there with OpFob, I mean, did they kind of replace that sense of purpose for you?
dude, that place is all about purpose, man. It's finding a sense of purpose beyond the call of duty and serving others other than yourself. And we don't go there and tell sob stories. We don't sit there and reminisce about the bad times. We sit and talk and razz each other for being in the other branches. We celebrate each other's wins. They have Bible studies. We shoot together on the range. I mean, we go to events together and volunteer and stuff. It's just an amazing community of people. And JR and Jimmy, of what they've started down there, it's absolutely phenomenal. And again,
So,
I can't. I'll never be able to thank them enough. And all I can ever do is volunteer and give back as much as I can to them, because it's become like kind of like that final piece of the puzzle for now to keep me pushing forward. And again, I feel now at this point in my life stronger than I've ever been.
it's awesome.
Um,
How did you
the
get
hard
hooked up with those
times,
guys? I mean, how did you run into them? I mean, how did you discover them? What was that initial walk in like? Let's take it through there because some of because the conversation you and I had offline leading up to this is that you owe a lot to OpFob
I do.
and with JR and what those guys are doing down there. So I really want to tell a good story. I really want to really solidify with the viewers of the podcast and the supporters of the foundation. I really want people to understand what they're doing down there and how they're freaking kicking ass and how they're doing it and how they're leading by example and how they're taking care of the veterans and they took care of you. You got an amazing story. And I'm passionate about this right now because the other guests that we have on, everyone finds something, man, that works for them because there's so many different options out there. It's important for veterans to know that there's so many other options out there for them rather than just the VA, rather than the VFW, rather than the FR, whatever it is, DAV. And that's fine. If you could find your purpose there, if you could find your healing in there, that's great. Do it. But if you're not finding it there, there's other great organizations out there. That's why this is so important to me to understand how you hooked up with OpFob, how they brought you in, what they did, and how it changed your life and how it saved your life, man. It's so important. So take us back. How did you find out about OpFob? Who introduced you to it? How did you find it? And what was it like walking in and just paint just tell a story about them.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was just like I happened to see one of their flyers laying around at one of the coffee shops or something in town. And it was like, hey, it's up in Ridgeland, South Carolina, which is about 30 minutes from my home here.
Okay.
And I was like, man, it's out in the middle of nowhere. I guess I'll go check it out. one of my buddies who is a cop in town here now. Again, he was one of my mentors growing up. He said he'd been out there a couple of times and really enjoyed it. Because the beautiful thing about OpFob is they are open to veterans and first responders and their families. So it's not just veterans. The first responder community is well represented out there. Um, and Went out there and checked it out, and again, it's just amazing. I mean, it's like 268 acres of just beautiful, pristine land that they've got. They give you a tour the first time you go out there. They've got some cabins out there you can stay in. Beautiful range that they just reset up. Some archery areas, 5 stand, skeet shoot and stuff like that. It's just like outdoor stuff to do. They've got this huge, beautiful barn where we do most of our coffee and camaraderies on Saturday mornings, and most of the events that take place go there. But it's just this huge, wide open space with a fire pit in the back, and just a place for people to gather. And it's not a lot of frills. I mean, it really isn't. It's just a community that they've built out there, and it's really all it is. I said it's just come together. They're battling veteran suicide. And Jr., one of the founders, worked for BlackRock, and has unfortunately has lost many of his friends. But his story is somewhat similar to mine in a sense that he also dealt heavily with the alcohol demons, and he needed his purpose, and this is his purpose. And it's amazing what he's done, because and that's why I resonate. It resonates so well with me and my life, is because it's just every time I go there, I leave with a sense of resurgence and a sense of like just a little more energy. It's they've got this amazing concert for the hero coming up this spring, I think in May. They do that's like their big fundraiser they do every year. But again, they just give so much back to the community, and they're just growing and trying to do more and more. And I think as of today, I mean, for all the thousands and thousands of touch points that they've had, they haven't lost one veteran or first responder to suicide that's been through that place.
Fuck yeah.
It just goes to show the power of that location and the people that are involved with it. And
It's a
um,
wonderful testament to the work that they're doing.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, they're committed to it, and they're amazing people, and they'll give you every second of their time. You want to talk to them all day long because they're just good people. But I've met and come across so many amazing veterans, and those guys that I love to death. They're like, "Oh man, I only served 3 years back in Vietnam." I'm like, "Dude, it's not only 3 years. Don't say that about yourself. You served a day," and that's just we all served in some capacity. Excuse me, but but you did your job, and you did it to the maximum extent possible, or that you were allowed to do at that time. And again, you moved on with your life, but don't ever sell yourself short. I get frustrated when veterans do that, so they kind of lessen themselves, because maybe they didn't do 20 years or whatever. It's like
We
it's never
see,
been that way.
we see that
Or weren't a
all
ground
the
pounder.
yeah, we see that all the time in our community, man. The whataboutism, I'm sorry, the whataboutism is prevalent, and sometimes it's so frustrating, man, because of course you got the door kickers, of course you got the guys and everything else, but I mean, it's all of us, right? I mean, you put that uniform on, you gave everything to Uncle Sugar to do whatever it wants with,
Yeah.
for the time of that contract, man. And some people's experiences are different. Everyone is, and it's something frustrating to me when I talk to guys at work, or I talk to Jim, or wherever the hell I may be, and they always want to compare themselves to someone else. And it's like, stop doing that, man, because those people are doing that too, right? And it's like, it just seems like I'm not sure if it's a stigma thing. I'm not sure if it's like a premeditated thought thing where people want to devalue themselves in a sense. And it's like, it's so frustrating to me when I see veterans that are devaluing themselves. And I got a guest coming up that we're going to talk about that here in a couple weeks, and I, I don't want to spoil it, but she's amazing, and she's not allowing people to devalue what she's doing because I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it, but it's I just don't like that, and it's such a hard thing for me to combat, and it's such a hard thing for me to talk people through with veterans. I'm like, bro, no, how uh, how are you sitting there devaluing yourself, And I mean, it's a frustrating thing for me. I haven't learned how to properly deal with, how to properly, I don't want to say coach, but it's just such a thing that I struggle with it when I'm in front of other veterans, man, especially guys on this podcast, man, because for every person that I have on this podcast, I talk to so many people that are like, oh man, that's not for me. I didn't get injured. I didn't serve. I didn't see the shit. I don't have any stories about kicking doors. I don't have any, no one died. I don't have PTSD. I don't have closed head injury. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's so difficult, man, to deal with it, So when you get hooked up with these guys down there in OpFob and all that, and they're able to sort through all that and get people connected and get you on a path of righteousness, man, I admire that because it's difficult, man. It's
Yeah,
difficult, but
absolutely.
I mean, if they found their groove and they're helping people, that is awesome.
Yep. And then like some of these guys that, and it's especially prevalent in the like the first responder community. They for whatever reason they hold themselves so much lesser than military folks. And I mean, I told one a couple weeks ago, I was like, do you realize that we deploy, but when we are done, we come home, and so we're not going to get shot at for again probably for a while or have to deal with that stuff. You guys go out every single day from your door of your house into your own neighborhoods and back home, and you have to worry about that threat every single day, all day long. I was
Yeah,
like, I can't imagine that.
yeah,
Because when we our deployments take us in and out of that threat environment. Yours is constant, and
that's a great
and
point.
it was like he said he goes, man, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're a person of service.
Yeah,
You just want to serve, you want to do better, and you don't think about yourself. So I said, stop. Same thing. Don't lessen yourself because I think unfortunately that lessening of yourself is what leads people down that path to suicide or
hmm,
hurting themselves with other drugs or alcohol or which is why I'm so happy that I was able to at least catch myself and you know, be honest enough with myself and humble enough to say, "Look, I need help. I'm not going to be able to make this. I'm not going to do this way because it's going to end." And there was times where I was like, "Yeah, I'd rather it just end, man. I cannot handle this pain anymore. I don't want to. I'm done fighting this physical pain, this mental pain." And again, I'm at the time lessening myself because I'm like, I didn't get shot. I didn't lose a friend right in front of my face. I didn't get blown up.
right.
I shouldn't have any of these problems. Um, but I did, and maybe not to the extent of some, but it was to the enough to where I needed to change my life. But again, finding that stool, putting enough legs underneath it, and putting more legs than you need. 4 is nice, but man, 50 sure is much better. And like I said, OpFob is a huge one in under my stool now because again, that it's just again the community and the camaraderie that they build there. Um, Matter of fact, coming up here, we've got our 22 days of light the fire that we all stand duty and stuff for 22 days up before um, Memorial Day, and it's just an amazing event. uh, and we come together and volunteer to stand duty, something we all hated when we were on active duty. So yeah, it's just again, it's a great place. I hope someday you get to a chance to experience it because it's just you'll leave there with a renowned vigor for life and just another sense of purpose in the world.
Yeah. So how has the relationship with your wife and your three kids improved since you chosen sobriety and you've overcome it? I'm sorry, you've overcome the drinking and then you become sober now. What you say, 6 years, and
Yep,
you
just
got
about.
involved with
Yep.
ObFob. I mean, how has everything else around you improved? Because you're not having those tough conversations of like, Justin, what the fuck, when she's coming through the door anymore at late at night with the kids, right? So how are things overall impacted rather than your own health? How has this benefited everything else?
Dude, it's like I said, the strongest my family's ever been, and we just continue to get stronger.
Awesome.
My wife and I have, like I said, I think we've grown together so much more in the last few years without the distractions. Feel like I'm becoming a much more present father, which is it's like a double edged sword because my kids are teenagers and that's when they don't want to be around their parents.
Well,
That's yeah, yeah. But again, we bond together over sports and playing guitar or
awesome.
other things, and so we have things in common. And again, when they're teenagers, they're doing their thing, and on the weekends, but um, again, I just sit back and I realize now that I'm just so blessed. Um, and I still talk to him about, the mistakes that dad made and I don't hide any of it. And, I talk to him about, hey, do you remember this time when dad maybe, fell down back behind the house and did that? And he goes, oh yeah, you said you just tripped. I'm like, okay, well, this is what really happened, and your dad was a mess. And I don't want you guys to ever be that way. I said, so if you ever have, I try to teach them about all my mistakes. I want them to, you know, I tell them I may not always have been a good example, but at least I'm an example of how to fix things or how to get yourself
Awesome.
squared away. and never be afraid to ask for help, never be afraid to call dad and, um, you know, let him know I'd be there for him because I just, again, that sense of purpose and the service I have for them,
Mm,
obviously, because they're my children, but I don't want them ever to feel like they're afraid or alone in any sense, or without help or without the ability to fix the situation they're in. So it's just, again, it strengthens our bond. Like I said, my oldest kid's
badass.
19, going to USC here up the road at the University of South Carolina, killing it in his biology degree. And we still talk, I mean, and we're able to talk as young as men now. And I'm seeing him grow up, and it makes me so damn proud. I mean, that's what life is about. That's what being a dad's about.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just, it's very, very gratifying. So yeah, dude, my life is so much better now than it was, yeah, 5 years ago. It's just been an upward trajectory. And again, I'm very blessed and humbled
That's awesome.
to have been surrounded by amazing people and
It's
organizations to kind
awesome.
of get me where I'm at.
Thank God. Thank God, man. So what's up with over the next couple of years, man? What do you got on the burner? You got any sticks in the fire? I mean, what kind of growth do you see for yourself? I mean, what's up? You got any plans?
Yeah. Honestly, my biggest thing at this point is, Um, finding a way. I mean, again, I appreciate this outlet from you because it's one of the ways to do it, but I'm finding a way to share my story. Veteran, non-veteran, it doesn't matter. I mean, people go through things in life, and if my story can somehow inspire or motivate somebody else to be better and turn themselves around, I want to share these experiences. I want to share the resources that I've had, the people that I've worked with, the amazing organizations that I've surrounded myself with. Because, like you said, not everybody's in the same spot, but they're going to have something other than the standards if they just look hard enough, um, to heal whatever it is that they be going through. To be able to sit and stop and say, "Hey, take care of yourself," because you can't bury yourself and burn yourself on both ends, or burn the candle at both ends, because that's when the really bad things happen. And I think I took it right up to the end, man. It was close. It was really, really close,
Yeah.
and I probably
Well,
closer
thank
than it
God
should
you
have been.
caught
But
it, man. Thank God you
yes,
caught it.
sir.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
But
Thank you.
I want, again, I don't want anybody else to have to get that close. I want them to be able to get the help they need before. So do everything I can to share and support these organizations, share the amazing work that my friends are doing, and put it out on word. And I work pretty hard on Instagram to support my group, my friends, and small businesses, people like Tim, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
those that
God
deserve
bless.
everything because they're just amazing people. And
Yeah.
I'll spend the rest of my life giving back to them, and it's going to make me feel good because it does.
That's great. That's great, man. So, what an incredible journey, man. Thank you. I want you to thank your family for the time for me that you spent with us here today. We're going to get everything linked up for OpFob and everything else, and hopefully, don't want to let any cats out of the bag, but hopefully, I see you in person here soon.
Dude, that'd be awesome.
Would it be? It'll be great, man. Put our arms around each other and and spend some time. So, yeah, man, we're gonna keep in touch. All these guys that I've had on the podcast and all that. And you know what? Something something I'm always grateful for, man, is I don't like using the like in the podcast world and talking with veterans and all that, we like to like suck up the term or like use the term a lot. Oh, my vulnerabilities. And I've been caught using it too. Like, I've talked to people and they're like, well, Chico, what's up, man? When are you going to be on the other side of the camera and share your vulnerabilities? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, man. And like, do I need to this, that? I start thinking about it, but just for the fact that because being a guy is tough, being a veteran's tough, right? Being a father's tough, being a man is tough, and we look at all this stuff. But to me, it is I can't tell you, man, how inspiring it is, how helpful it is for me and other people on the podcast, man, to have you guys share your stories, man, because at the end of the day, man, I mean, everyone who's broken, we can get fixed. Everyone who's vulnerable, we can overcome it. So just to have a guy like you, Justin, sit down and say, look, man, I was fucked up because of this. I did this. I realized this. And damn it, I'm working to get better. And I have these problems. And it takes just such a strong, it just takes a strong man just to say, you know what? It's time to be truthful. That's why I asked you about were you being honest or not before, because you're being so damn honest right now. And just the amount of strength you guys have and the guests who come on my show and the veterans who are part of my life now, man. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of you guys sharing with us, man. So your story is definitely going to help others, man. And if guys can get hooked up in your area with OpFob or, whatever else, man, I'm going to do everything I can to help that. So please, man. So just thank you, Justin. This is cool, man. And it's honorable work you guys are doing, man. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. And like I said, you'll tell your story when you're ready, my man. That's you'll know when it is. I wouldn't have done this 2 years ago. I promise you that. I would have never even
Awesome.
considered it. So yeah, like I said, I'll share my socials with you because anybody that wants to reach out to me, I'm more than
Awesome.
happy to set them up with good things and do the right thing for somebody. So
Hell yeah.
thanks, man.
Yeah, man. We'll get it linked up for sure. So, all right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, brother. Anytime, man. Thank you. So,
All right, man. Thank you. Semper Fi.
yeah, Super Fly, my man. Thank you, brother. All right, guys, that was it. We are feet dry. We are returned to base. I want to thank Justin Cooke for joining us. We're going to get everything linked up here. And thank you so much for spending the time with us. Thank you for supporting the podcast and the Miles Gregarious Foundation. So that's it. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.